Hey everybody, and welcome to episode 18 of Into the Rift. Tonight I am joined by the wonderful Dave Troop, Steven Nguyen, and Razzle Dazzle, whatever you want to call him, Raz. Potentially D-Raz, if those of you want Twitter. Nothing confirmed yet, but we'll wait for that big announcement. This week, we didn't have a show last week, so we're going to be covering twice the content this week. Since we have 2 weeks of results from every region, at least, we're going to have a lot more to talk about. We're going to talk about EU tonight, NA, LPL, and LCK as well. And right off the bat, I just want to get started with EU. Let's start with Fnatic. Fnatic 4-0. This is a team coming into it that I pretty much guarantee none of us would have guessed that this team would work out as well as it has. After week one, everyone was still a little skeptical. But 2 weeks of worth of results, they're 4-0. What do you think makes this team tick?
Fnatic, I think Yellow Star's leadership is a huge part of it. I was talking to some of the other, some China Talk people, some other people, and in the past, Fnatic has always been led by Pekes, shot calling, and Cyanide shot calling, right? And I assume they led the team they want. They basically led the team with their philosophy of how to play the game. Whereas Yellow Star is the only remaining member. He's now the veteran. I'm assuming he's the shot caller. He's basically handpicked most of this team. I know he handpicked Steelbuck.
Yeah, I believe he is the shot caller. I think that was mentioned by two of the newer members in their first interview in week one.
Mm-hmm. I think he said it himself too.
Yeah, I think he did too. And he is now, since he gets to lead the team the way he thinks the game should be played. And you can definitely tell that it's a very different Fnatic, because the other Fnatic just would have TP mid laners, expect would make plays, and then they would just make picks. They would manipulate vision to get the team to go over to the enemy team to walk in dark areas that they would think were safe. But this time, he's he's leading the charge with Leona, Annie, and picking people off forcibly. He's basically taking a battering ram, throwing it straight at the enemy team. So it's very different Fnatic.
And I think one of the big things about this team that I've seen is that Steelback may not be the best AD carry, and their 2v2 lane may not be the strongest, but if you put him on a character like Sivir, it doesn't really matter, because that utility from On the Hunt ult, as long as he's not feeding a lane, he's going to provide enough utility to the team, and if he makes good calls, or if Yellowstar makes good calls, they can use that huge mobility boost to just fight, or to force team fights on their terms, which, given the strength of the rest of their lineup, is pretty deadly.
Yeah. Well, I still think the biggest surprise on that team, though, has got to be Reignover. I mean, from what I heard from even analysts and guys like Hermit who were watching scrims and stuff, he wasn't really that impressive, and he definitely wasn't impressive in Korea before that. And he came over here, and I mean, he's been phenomenal so far. His Rengar play has been absolutely outstanding, and it's such a different Fnatic in terms of the jungle presence, right? Cyanide was such a passive because you had Peke and Soaz, and you were feeding those guys and Reckless, and you just had to feed them kills, and feed them the farm. But now Reignover seems to just be playing a very aggressive style, and that's kind of not what you expect with Fnatic. So I think it might take teams a few weeks to kind of adjust to, Fnatic, aggressive jungle instead of passive jungle, strong laners kind of thing.
It's funny when you say the aggressive jungle, because I'm not saying you're outright wrong or anything, but it's interesting he chose Olaf. And he said that he's a smart guy, because his reasoning for picking Olaf was that EU games are longer typically, the laning phase tends to drag out. So if you pick Lee Sin, like he would normally do if it was a Korean game or something, he would have to make more of an impact early on. But because it's a slower paced meta, he can use a higher scale jungler, someone who starts a little bit slower like Olaf, and especially because this is a high CC meta, the Sandra, stuff like that, Olaf is king, right? He's got to do all.
Yeah. And when they pick the Olaf, they usually pair it with the Sivir. And the other thing to consider is the jungle in general right now, not just in EU, is much slower than it has been in the past. I mean, your strongest early game junglers are going to be Lee Sin, Rek'Sai, and J4. And every other jungler that has seen play is infinitely slower than that, right? Rengar has one of the worst first clears in the game. Obviously, Reignover showed that it can be still played and it can be viable, but the rest of the jungle pool isn't great. Elise can clear the jungle safely, but it takes a year and a half, and her power is much lower than it used to be. So, while I don't think Olaf is always going to be the right choice, it's a very well placed in the meta right now.
Yeah, it's going to be one of those. Go on.
I just want to say something I heard. I remember going into the first week of Fnatic, I started to suspect that they might do all right, just simply because of what I heard about Huni. Just the rumors. Because have you guys heard of this story? Because Huni was a player that was sitting on the bench of Samsung Blue, and the story is that basically that he Fnatic, when they went up against Samsung Blue in Worlds, they were scrimming against them. Like, I mean, like when they went to Korea, they were scrimming against them pretty religiously. Now, their scrim records, from what we've heard, was that they
were about 50-50.
Yeah, 50-50 against Blue. They were doing horribly against White. But when they subbed in Huni, like, they just got completely destroyed by him. Like, they got wrecked by him. Yeah. And so, like, fast forward now, Fnatic is, like, gearing up, getting members for the team, and, like, he was, like Yellowstar specifically wanted Huni for the team.
Really impressive scouting.
Exactly. So actually, I'm still really skeptical about Reignover, only because I felt like even though he's done really well and his team has done really well, like he has exceptional laners in every lane, like in every single lane. The Bivin has like probably one of the better mid laners in the region. Huni obviously is a god. Top in the bottom lane, of course, you have like Yellowstar, and of course Steelback still has more like to prove from himself. But like when you have that reliable laners, it's, I don't know, it's easier to kind of make a name for yourself in that sense.
Well, the other thing we have to keep in mind is that it feels like a long time because it's been 2 weeks, but it's really only 4 games. That's not a very big, you know what I mean? Like, that's not a huge data set yet. We can't like draw any firm conclusions. Like, yeah, he looks like he could be a promising player, and it looks like he could be good, but we can't say definitively yet, like, oh, he is a great jungler or anything like that, because we just haven't seen enough games yet to make a concrete statement of that strength.
You know, from what I've seen, they seem to have very good macro strategy, but I think you're right to a certain degree that the lanes are so strong right now. Even if Steelback isn't proven, like you said, Yellowstar obviously can carry, well, maybe not carry that lane, but they're not going to feed, right? And they're not going to be super far behind in CS. And the way that they move across the map means that, honestly, their laning phase in bot lane isn't that relevant as long as they force objectives like they have been. But moving forward, do you see them being overtaken by teams like SK? Do you think Elements, when they eventually rematch, is going to do much better this time around? I feel like Elements' first week was just not very solid overall. So if Elements is getting better and their pick ban is getting better, where do you think Fnatic, let's say, will be in like 2 weeks? Not even where they're going to end the split. Do you think they'll still be in first place?
No.
No.
I think SK will be in first place.
That's a good guess. For me, it's a toss-up between the two. My biggest curiosity about the new Fnatic lineup is how they're gonna cope with the few losses, because they're doing well right now, and it's you know, a lot of people are saying, like, you know, if like Fnatic or even just like teams in general who have like Korean imports, you know, they're doing a good job. They're making sure that the Korean players are feeling welcome, that they feel at home, whatever they need, they can provide. It's easy to make players feel at home and happy when they're doing well and when they haven't lost yet. So when they start losing, what's going to happen? Like, unless they go undefeated or something, but like I don't think that's going to happen. Like I'm positive they're going to drop 3-4 games minimum, right? And as an example, Cloud9, their first domestic split in NA, I think they went 25-3. They bounced back from losses super easy back then, and that's not going to happen for every team.
And it's a little different now for the team, which we'll talk about when we get to NA.
Well, Fnatic has been playing with no expectations too, right? I mean, like the majority of the community didn't expect these guys to do very well, and now, hey, look, they're actually doing very well. So now it's going to be like, oh, okay, wait, never mind, there are expectations. So it'll be like, how do these players react under pressure?
Yeah, exactly. So the bigger you are, the bigger you fall, kind of thing.
Exactly, yeah.
And I think that's fair. And obviously we have a lot to see, but like you said, this lineup we don't know very much about. There weren't very many expectations going into it, but I think they're still mostly an unknown team. We don't know how the team interacts. We've seen good results, but there's a lot of questions left to be answered, which I'm hoping will be answered over the next couple of weeks. We'll see if Fnatic remains on top or not. The other top team is going to be SK, obviously Forgiven, and What the Fox doing pretty well on this new lineup. The team as a whole looking strong. Let's kind of do the same thing we did with Fnatic. How do you feel about their macro play? How do you feel about their lanes? How do they compare to old SK?
Personally, I think they're really good in pretty much in every position, especially the switch into the AD carry position. I think they're really good.
I mean, Forgiven just been dominating, right? I mean, he's basically doing what Reckless did when Reckless came in on Fnatic, and he didn't die in the first few games, and like everybody was like hyping him super hard. That's basically what. That's exactly what he did, right? Like he's come in the first 4 games, he hasn't died once. He's been playing out of his mind. It's very impressive, very, very impressive. That team looks very, very good, and I think they could win Europe. Like if they keep playing the way they are, I don't see who's going to beat them.
And one of the big things that we've seen in EU so far with these two teams, the one thing that these guys have in common is these very confident, experienced supports as shot callers. Obviously, N-rated, praised as just a great analytical mind. Personally, one of my favorite players in EU. And then Yellowstar, similarly, not a player we got to see shine with under XPEK and Cyanide as that whole like all-star lineup, but is doing really well now. Do you think this is like a crucial thing to have in EU, and do you think this is what separates those teams from the rest of the teams? Is this distinguished veteran player and shot caller?
I think it helps for sure. I mean, you can like they don't make like for a team with this many like rookies or like amateurs to the LCS, you would expect pretty shaky shot calling, and I think it's a huge testament to him that you don't see that at all. You see really strong definitely strong shot calling. Maybe not really, really strong, but definitely very solid shot calling. And much stronger than you should expect from a new team like that full of rookie players. So I think it's a huge testament to him and his game knowledge. And from what I've heard, Origin kind of lacks closing the game out in those later phases. Like that's the problem that team is having right now. So he might really have been part of a huge part of the play behind Fnatic, right?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point to make, because one of my next questions was going to be, like, without Yellowstar on that new Origin lineup, how do you expect, XPEK and the rest of the team to fare? Like, do you think, I mean, obviously this is a bit of a tangent, we haven't seen too many Origin games, but do you think Origin is really going to suffer because of that?
I think they'll be okay on the long run. I mean, they do have Myther, and from what I've heard, Origin, Amazing, Herman told me that when Amazing is on point, he is on point, like absolutely on his game, to probably like one of the top of his position during those games. So, I mean, if Amazing can be steady throughout the entire season for Origin, they can go pretty far.
I think Origin is like, in my opinion, they're a shoe, and every one of those players have shown really, really strong shot calling, and like it's going to be interesting to see how Mithy will be coming back into it. That's one point to be interested in. I think like that team they're basically bound for LCS, in my opinion anyways. Just because they have the strong laners, they have the strong players. Like Amazing, say what you want about him. He is an amazing guy.
You have to walk it, just accept it.
You have to try really hard to not use that word to describe him.
Yeah. It's pretty bad. But he's a great jungler. He really is. He's solid. He's super. Like he has his problems, but they're problems when you put him on the world stage. Like he's in a challenger setting. He's at the very least gonna get his team going back into the LCS.
Well, they have been streaming LCS teams pretty often, from what I hear. They're doing pretty well.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's jump back to EU LCS. Obviously, challenger scene hasn't officially started yet. The qualifiers are going on right now, and I think that they're doing well, or at least I know they are for NA. The qualifiers, that is, not the games. I'm curious. Elements is one of the final teams I want to talk about. We'll talk about the rest of EU as a group, just because I think that there's a lot of mediocre results across the board for the rest of the teams. But Elements 3-1 now. Most recently, Reckless put up that Ask FM or that Twit Longer, I can't remember exactly what it was, where someone asked basically, like, how do you feel about the team and the environment? He basically just said, it's pretty disappointing. I expected more from my team. I expected a more professional environment, and it's not really what I'm getting. Is anybody surprised by this, by the way? That's my first question.
Whew.
I don't know. I mean, he seemed to this is not the first time that he's kind of publicly come out and said he's not happy with it, right? So, in my opinion, this is a little bit worrying, almost, if you're him. That he's saying this multiple times. Like, didn't he have to delete his whole Ask FM? Isn't that what happened?
Yeah, I'm not.
Or did he delete his whole Ask FM or just the question? I can't remember. He deleted one or the other.
He deleted his Ask FM.
Yeah, so I think that might have been like the organization being like, hey, you know what, you can't even have this anymore. So you might have learned a harsh lesson in reality there.
Yeah, well, and I think he's under contract and he's probably in trouble for saying that. But I mean,
Probably.
obviously they can't get rid of him. He's one of the best, if not the best AD carry in EU, and the team needs him dearly. And I don't necessarily think that this is going to influence his performance too much. I think he's a professional for the most part. I don't think it's wrong of him to criticize his team. Maybe wrong to do it on such a public channel.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think it bodes well for Elements. I think Elements has always had these kind of internal problems, and it doesn't look good to me when this
I
kind
mean,
of stuff's coming out.
But yeah,
getting
what does it
reckless
mean,
wasn't gonna
though?
automatically fix all the problems anyway. So like, if they're not doing if they're not working their asses off to fix up the other problems other than getting reckless, then they're not. It doesn't look good. Just
Yeah.
one
Well,
player
like,
isn't a
here's-
magic fix.
Here's my problem with EU. Like, if you're like a team that's on the level of Elements, in the sense that like the individual players in every respect, you even talk about how many problems Wicked has, but he's still regarded as one of the top players in his role.
Oh, for
and
sure.
so it comes down to like, what motivation do they have to like take it seriously? And motivation is such a big issue, of course, because like you look to NA and each team understands, like, because of course they understand what their goal is. 3 spots, worlds. All right, and there are numerous teams that are competitive going to that spot, and so they're like, wow, we have to like bust our asses off to get to this point.
Mhm.
And now you have EU, and this is, I don't want to say. I don't want to say EU is so top heavy. I remember when I was like looking at the list of teams in the LPL, I wanted to say that was top heavy. It's not even close compared to EU. EU's like, I feel sorry for the top teams, because if you don't have that level of competition in the respect of like SK, you think SK is gonna have any SK and Fnatic in terms of like competing in their own league? That's not going to happen. So like when they finally get their spot, because that's the expectation now. Are they going to get their spot to Worlds? Like, how are they going to fare, because they haven't had, or at least not going to have that competition? I don't know. That's my small rant on that. It's like,
I think that's a good, really, really good point. And it's not even something that I thought about, but like in general, those teams, both or pretty much all of those teams, I don't know too much about SK, but I both know Elements when they were previously Alliance or CLG or whatever, and obviously Fnatic as well in the past. Obviously different teams, different lineups, but have had issues where they kind of just like goof off in the regular season and then try to bring it back in the playoffs, because they do just outclass the majority of the teams in the region. And in in NA last split felt that way too, to a certain degree.
Yeah.
I mean, not so much that there was like just a top 3 and only a top 3, but just that like the bottom 3 or 4 teams were
just kind of there.
less than impressive. Yeah, I think namely like complexity. I mean, yeah, they got labeled the blue shell, but I mean, okay, cool. Like you're still finishing.
Like you can be like
8th place.
Vulcan, go 1-3 against every team. That doesn't mean you're better than any one of those teams just because you beat them once.
yeah. It's just like, even with NA, I think NA is better off in that sense, because like I'm not gonna say NA is better than EU, not even close. I think like SK is so far ahead of
Yeah.
in my like of a lot of teams in the West that it pales in comparison. Like, but I think
Yeah.
NA competition within themselves, it's just like, yeah, like it's difficult to really pinpoint a team out of like for the top 3 spot that can really get there. So they have to bust their asses off. They have to scrim so often, and it's not even about scrimming. It's just like how you take the scrims, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I think losing is important. I think losing is very important for teams. Like losing
Yeah, it
keeps you
is.
humble, losing keeps you honest. And I think if you're winning every scrim and you're winning every week in LCS,
You
and
lose
have to
perspective.
yeah. You
And it's a
start
lot
using-
easier to it's a lot easier to like have your mistakes be like obviously pointed out to you when you lose, because they'll cost you a game or they'll cost you a big advantage. But when you win, sometimes it's very easy to think that things that were mistakes weren't mistakes
Mhm.
or
because
just
they
not to
worked
take it
out for you.
seriously. Yeah,
Yeah,
that makes
exactly.
perfect sense. Yeah.
Like in the Elements case, like Raz kind of touched on, they are pretty in individual talent. They're really high up there in EU, so they probably don't drop a lot of games, and they probably win a lot of games based on individual talent alone. And so because of that, they don't see these specific issues that weigh the team down. And I think one issue, I was talking to Kelsey Moser about this at one point. We actually kind of came to the conclusion that we think Wicked has really good engage sense. Like we think he knows how to engage pretty well. But the thing is that whenever you watch Alliance play, they don't always follow up on Wicked right away. it's kind of like half-assed or something. Like, oh, should we go in? Should we not go in? And I think it's also because like Elements is a team that prioritizes farm a lot, and then they like the 5v5 fight, and then you just like push a bunch of towers, stuff like that. They enjoy like the late game, and I used to watch a lot of COG EU way back then. I went to World Season 2, so I got to see them up close, their play. And I realized something, that Wicked doesn't have his dive buddy anymore. Snoopy, you would dive with Wicked. Like, he has the follow-up in Snoopy back then. Right now, there's no one really following up on Wicked, so like, obviously he does look bad. Like, I'm not saying like Wicked, that's the only reason why Wicked looks bad. Wicked has a lot of problems. But like, because they don't see these issues because they usually win their games off individual talent alone.
Yeah.
And I mean, just if we look at like week 1, right? If we just look at the top lane matchup, like Wicked on Aurelia got ahead in the early game, like totally got ahead, should have been able to snowball reasonably. Like Lysandra versus Aurelia, obviously like a lot of jungle attention was paid to top once Wicked started getting a lead, but at the same time Wicked threw it away, and he ended that game with just a miserable scoreline, like 3x amount of deaths in 3. I think it was like 8 or 11.
13, I think 3.
Oh Jesus.
Something
yeah,
like
well,
that.
and I mean that's pretty miserable. But
Like,
I think the bigger issue, like regardless of Wicked's laning phase, is team communication in that sense. Because Wicked, obviously, like with good engage sense, if you have a team who can follow up, that's really important. And that's something that in general, I think a lot of EU teams lack. So, and on the world stage, we saw it like over and over again. Like Wicked's Alistar, Wicked's Maokai. Like, I have never seen a man go in and die in so much, as much as he did in Worlds. And it was... You know, and it was sad because a lot of times it wasn't that his engage was wrong. Like, it might have been risky, but it was a solid engage. Like, he would land the headbutt pulverized combo on multiple people, and the team was like, oh, well, no. Like, no, we don't want to go in there, which I think is concerning. And it makes me... is there any team right now in EU that you think could beat out Elements for third place?
Do we have Fnatic a second?
Well, yeah. Well, let's say for top 3. You think
Rocket? Yeah, that's a good one.
Like, I don't think Rocket's been... Like, I think there's been... Something's been off. I mean, everything that everybody was saying was that they've been playing phenomenally. Like, they're a really solid team. They just didn't show up in the LCS. Now, maybe that's just... Maybe they'll just be one of those teams that doesn't show up at the time. Like, we don't know that. But like I said earlier, like, I don't think 4 games is a big enough sample size to judge the entire thing. So, I don't know. Like, I think Rocket... I think counting Rocket out at this point would be a huge mistake. I still think that they could be a top team. Like, I would not be shocked if at the end of the season, Rocket, Elements, and SK are in the top 3 and Fnatic drops out. Like, that would not surprise me.
I'm a fan of Fnatic at this stage, but I think your Fnatic is mostly unproven, whereas Elements does, despite has a kind of a rocky track record, they do have consistent wins in EU. Yeah. I'm still a Unicorns of Love fan, despite the fact that they are apparently horrible at pick ban, and it frequently loses them the game. Like, I still love the majority of that team, but yeah, I think you're probably right. Like, I kind of forgot about Roccat in general, just because they're such a middle of the pack team right now. But
yeah,
I can't see Roccat doing worse than 5th at all.
Yeah, no.
The rest of the teams, it's such a toss up. Like, I just have no idea who's going to show up at any given point. In week 1, we saw Giants do so well, and then in week 2 they just were kind of...
And I mean,
yeah.
And to be fair, like Rocket, when they played Fnatic, I thought Rocket was winning. Like, Rocket got to the late game with the late game composition. Like, they should have won that game. It was just a beautiful play by Rainover to kill Woolite, and that set a whole thing in motion. But like, that was worrying that Fnatic didn't win that game sooner against a late game composition, So I think that this Fnatic team, they went 4-0 and they're off to a great start. They look solid. Like, congratulations to them. It's good. But I think we might be rushing to jump on the hype train a little bit too early. There's still definitely some kinks in their game.
Fnatic, do you mean the Elements versus Rocket?
No, the Fnatic versus Rocket when Woolite was playing Tristana and
that game.
And he killed him at the end of the game. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. So I think that game, because at that point in the game when Rainover made that play, Rocket should have won the game. Like, at that point in the game, Rocket should have been able to win. They had the better late game composition. Fnatic should have been able to close it out sooner. So that's what I'm saying. There's still a few places where Fnatic could shore up some things. They look very good. There's promise there, but they're not like this undefeated. They haven't looked as ironclad as SK has.
Yeah.
Where they've just dominated teams up and down and left very little room for error.
That's deja vu. I remember the Rocket game that they had with Jinx. Pretty sure that was like the really obscenely long game with against Elements.
Mhm.
Oh my god. Oh,
And that's Rocket has a lot of missteps, and that's part of the reason why I was
still
hesitant to label
recovering.
them as a top team. But they pick good comps, they run them well for half the game. Which half of the game it kind of depends. But if they can figure that out, it's not like at any point they have a horrible late game or a horrible early game. It's just it's never clear. Like you're never sure when they're gonna f it up, but it happens. You know what I mean? Like at some
Yeah.
point, sometimes it's a bad late game, sometimes it's a bad mid game, sometimes it's a bad early game, but they're still coming out or they're still going even, which makes me think that there is the potential for them to do better in the season. Even if I wouldn't put them, they're not going to finish worse than top five. Like EU is such, you're right. EU is so very top heavy, and it's just hard for me to imagine them losing to any team. Like, they're not going to lose to MYM. They're not going to lose to Copenhagen Wolves. They're not going to lose to Gambit. Like those things aren't going to happen.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
they 50-50 with Unicorns of Love probably, And even if they lose to all the top teams, that still puts them in decent standing.
Yeah.
Let's move forward to NA.
Our other favorite Western
Our
region.
other favorite region, as most of us. So before we even get started in NA, how do you guys feel about the quality of games in NA? We did say that they're a lot less top heavy, that the talent's a lot more spread out. Is NA what's going on with NA? What's your general opinion of NA as a region?
Well, at first, my reaction was that it was less cringeworthy, but I'm not really necessarily... On further reflection, I'm not sure if I just dropped my expectations so low for NA that I'm just not cringing as much, or if it's just because it's a different kind of cringe. I mean, last season, we saw a lot of, 50-minute bullshit games with complexity and other teams that I'm not going to bother listing out because you all know them. And those games should never have existed. And those teams should never deserve to win. Neither did the other team. They should have just ended in a tie, and both teams will go home in disgrace. That was the kind of cringe rating that I was just like, I hate my region. Like, why?
Yeah. Okay. So one thing, I don't disagree with you, but I think to a certain degree we can chalk that up to changes in season 5. First off, Jigs isn't good anymore. Praise Jesus.
Praise the Lord.
Thank God. Right? And poke comps are still semi-viable, but definitely we don't see them as much. We see a lot more hard engage. And the other thing is with the new nature of Dragon as an objective, it's no longer minor. Like you have to at some point in the game take a dragon if you want to win. And if the enemy team gets 5 dragons, you're obviously going to lose. So despite the fact that it doesn't always work out in that way, cough cough Dignitas, get your shit together. Most games can be ended around 30 minutes, 40 minutes. Like we shouldn't see 50 or 60-minute games.
Well, we have. And
shouldn't. Asterisks.
But
Asterisks.
we have. But there's obviously, I'm hoping, and to be fair, our sample size is significantly smaller at this point in the year. I'm hoping that there will not be as many. And I think, despite the fact that teams are still struggling to close out games, a lot of it does have to do with Dragon and Baron. Like, it does give you, to a certain degree, inevitability if you're able to sustain a gold lead.
Yeah, kind of what I was saying also was that this season we have a lot of more, probably just as equally cringeworthy games, just in different ways. Like, the Coast vs. Dig game where Coast tried to do Baron and then Dig just pushed to win. Like, those are the other kind of cringeworthy games. The ones that are cringeworthy and you're like, well, I kind of expected that out of a region like this, and you laugh.
Well, but there's been a few of those long slugfest this year already too. So
there have, but that's a combination. Before that would have been you just don't know how to close up the game. This time it's a combination of you don't know how to close up the game maybe, and you're just looking for the safe 5th dragon.
Yeah. Fifth dragon at this point, and I feel like it's being way too overvalued with certain teams because let's be fair, there are certain teams every game, pretty much every game you have a team with a massive gold lead, and how do they play it out? It's like, well, we could force down certain towers, try and end the game. Or we have a lead. We can just guarantee our win with a 5th dragon. And so they just stall out the game to God knows how long. It's so sad because there's so many teams. Like for instance, Team Impulse. Team Impulse, there was a lot of hype over that team. Now, of course, there was a inevitable language issue that they were going to have. And I don't know how much that affected it. But holy moly, they have no synergy with Rush has no synergy with his mid laner, and he has no synergy with his top laner. And so you'd see time and time again there would be a massive opportunity Worst one was when they were up against Team 8. And Cali was pressed up against his tower as a Malphite against a Gnar. Now, what should happen there? Well, Rush and LeBlanc, and Xiao Xiao, 100% should go up there and dive his ass. When did that ever happen? Hell no. That never happened. And so the way Xiao Xiao would use his advantage in the mid lane was he would just kind of like fuck around. He would just like mess around in the enemy jungler, just kind of like find a way to push Porpoise Pops out. Like that's not efficient, but I guess that's the best he can do if he doesn't have like any synergy. What's going on? It just doesn't exist.
But I think that the sad thing is like every team has their own version of that at this stage in NA. And I think like the teams that are having these long games and winning, it's not because of like confident strategy and shot calling or like an overall strategy where they have like a late game scaling comp and they're waiting to hit their power spike. It is just like the team not working together to get objectives and one player trying to make whatever advantage they can. And I think Team Impulse is a lot like this, where I feel like it's much more 5 players than it is like a team as a whole. I think Winter Fox feels that way to a certain degree as well. Yeah. Team 8 actually has decent team play sometimes, but I think for the most part is the same in that regard. And then obviously Dignitas.
Yeah, Dignitas has been really bad. I think the biggest thing for NA that's been like surprising for people, the reason the region has seemed kind of worse than usual, is because we're so used to watching Cloud9 play, very strong League of Legends, and they just haven't been this split, and that's kind of been it's kind of taken away from the overall quality of the league. Now, I don't think many people would have thought CLG would be doing this well, and Santorin seems to have been doing very well. I mean, he seems to be actually holding the mantle quite nicely, so props to him. And I think, of course, it would be almost incorrect of us to not give a shout out to our good friend Hubo Soldra and his success, because they've started out very, very well. Much better than I expected them to. I can say that for sure. I was wrong, so I am sorry for doubting you guys. I mean, it's been a very good start, and if they can keep it up, then I mean, I had a struggle to see them finishing top 3 still, but they could finish in the upper half of the league if they keep playing the way they are.
All right, well, let's stay on Gravity for a second, because this is a team that's obviously at the top, 3-1 now, doing quite well. Other than that one really bad pick and ban phase, their pick and bans have been great. So obviously, yeah, props to Hubo. But what do you think makes this team good? Are they good just because the rest of NA is kind of lackluster at this stage, or do you think that they like have good macro sense and that they're playing the game well?
Half and half, I guess.
Yeah, half and half.
Yeah. NA's been a little bit shaky, so I think to really bolster them up at this point would be a little bit premature and unfair. But I think they've been playing okay. I mean, they've been winning. They've won more than they've lost in a region that hasn't looked great. I guess that's all you can say, right? Like,
I've heard some debate that it's kind of similar to the China in a sense, in that the bottom tier teams in the LPL or the LCS are pretty much, maybe they're worse than the challenger team, because there's so much going on in the challenger scene right now in NA, in which you can just look at those teams and be like, wow, that's actually looks really good. And so you look at Dignitas or Coast, and you just don't know what's going to happen there. Or yeah.
I think Coast is still a lot better. I mean, they did prove it quite convincingly that they were quite miles ahead of most of the other challenger teams, in my opinion, at least. I don't know. I think there's quite a bit of a drop off, to be honest. Like, I think with the 10 teams, like, we've really saturated all the best players. Like, I think once you go down into challenger now, it'll be a significant decline in play. Like, I think next split, the 10th team is going to do, based on what I've seen so far, I think next split, the 10th team will do, like, the team that gets automatically swapped in will do worse than the team that finishes 10th
right
split.
now? Okay.
Yeah. I think that team is going to be Fusion, though, and I'm not 100% either way with Fusion.
Well, Nintendo might not even play, right? Because, I mean, now he's had his second seizure. Like, it's like, hope that guy gets better.
I don't know what's going on with Nintendo, dude. Like, he needs to...
I feel really bad.
He needs to fix that before anything else. Like, that's the first...
Yeah, and definitely. Yeah, take care of yourself before you play this game anymore. And I'm worried about... I hope Nintendo does well, but I would rather him stop playing and Fusion just be fucking awful. If he is that important to the team, then him like kill himself playing League of Legends. I don't think that's what anybody wants, and no one is enough of a Fusion fan to say that. I don't think.
Yeah. I agree.
I'm curious.
Yeah, that's true. It just comes down to experience, though. Like, because the reason why we're saying that the last place team, be it Coast, be it Dig, like the only reason why we're finding it that they'll probably be 10 times better than any challenger team that comes in. It's just based on the competition, the level of competition. Like Dig seems bad now. They start facing teams like TSM, CLG, Gravity, Cloud9. Like I don't know if I've already said Cloud9, but like you said, they first start facing those teams and they just get better based off of having that experience. And so the real question is, like, because here's the issue with having an automatic relegation, is that, like, you're basing it simply off of not so much of current skill, but off of potential. And it's such a weird discussion to have. It's like, well, does this team deserve to have that spot, regardless of how good they are currently? And so you're going to have endless discussion based on that, because...
I feel like the automatic 10th relegation needs some work. I feel like that team should automatically have to play against a challenger team.
Yeah, that's my thought.
Whereas I feel like every team but the top 4 should have to compete to see who gets relegated at the end of a split based on standings. Like that's my current feeling for it. Well, if the goal is to incentivize performance and you're afraid that the bottom team is just going to fuck around because there's no talent in challenger, right? Then like you need to do something so that there's incentive to be in top 3. And obviously, like if you're a top 5 team in NA, like you're not going to lose to a challenger team. No. You're not going to lose to anyone below you in the standings. So why not have a tournament? Like why not play more games and give, teams a chance? Because I feel like auto-relegating a team is bad, but you do need to have something at the bottom to keep people playing. So what that is, I think we could totally argue, but I don't think auto-relegation for 10th place is ever going to be right.
No, I completely agree with you on the auto relegation. The only thing I could see is why people would object to like that many teams entering into a relegation tournament would be like the organizations and the stability. Because you invest a lot into an LCS team, and then if one bad day their team gets plays like shit or something like that, like all of a sudden now you're out of the LCS. Like, so I think it would be. The keeping it 8, 9, 10, the bottom 3 teams entering the relegation tournament would be fine. But I 100% agree with you on the 10th. Place should not be automatic relegation. I think because there's going to be times when it's just they're too much better. Doesn't make sense to bring in a far worse team.
I think the only way I'd be
except in EU, we can relegate Gambit. Let's relegate Gambit, boys. I'm okay with that. In NA, not so much.
Wow, damn, you hate Gambit, man?
I'm not impressed, and I'm tired of them. I used to love Gambit, is the thing, and they suck now, and they've continued to suck, and they keep promising me things that they can't do. And the only thing
you're breaking up with Gambit.
Yeah,
it's not you, it's me. No, but it actually is you.
No, it is you. It is you, Gambit. I hate you so much. I don't understand. All right.
Okay, here's
aside. Good. Please go, Raz. Please.
I want to talk about this because I'm pretty much the lone person in a sea of disbelievers when it comes to auto relegation. Because I sound like a dumbass because I talk to everybody and they all say they're all against me in this sense that I do believe in auto relegation, and I actually have a decent example, I'd say. A decent one. It's okay. It's all right.
Oh, I want to hear this.
Snake got auto promoted, and in its place, Young Glory and I forgot World Elite. No, it wasn't World Elite Academy. God, who was it? I think it was World Elite Academy. No, but they still had the tournament. Okay, so World Elite Academy won the tournament, went in, blah blah blah. But yeah, okay, so I'm saying Snake because Snake looks like a piece of shit. It's so sad to say that, but like in the LSPL, they had a very polarizing gameplay. They were not a good team, like a whole team. Of course, they wanted they were second place in the LSPL. So what does that say about the rest of the league? But the Snake as a team, they had great players. Individual players were excellent, and they had that one game plan. You can call them maybe you could say they're similar to CJ Blaze in that one the
six-man push that they were so successful with for so long.
I remember Doa and Monty calling CJ Blaze one thing. It was that one-trick wart,
pony.
One trick pony, but they had another term for it. Anyways, I'm gonna butcher it anyway, so I might as well continue on with it. So they were so bad, and I just hated that the fact that they got auto promoted even though at the same time I was kind of still okay with auto promotion, auto relegation. But when they got the opportunity to get inside of the actual, because of course you saw them in preseason, they just lost to every team in preseason. They looked bad. They even almost lost to a challenger Chinese team, by the way. And a challenger Chinese team is a team that could barely even make it to the LSPL. But you know what? They had some roster changes. They added Beast and Ella, and I don't want to make this this is an NA discussion. I'm having a discussion about Chinese. Holy
No, it's
moly.
okay. China's your.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a good comparison, and I think that we've talked enough about Snake on this show.
Okay.
I'll argue with you about Snake later.
Warhorse. Okay, there we go. One trick Warhorse. God, I suck. Anyway.
Thank you, Chad.
Yeah, thank you, Chad. God damn it. I love you, Jeremy. But yeah. So anyways, they got into the LPL. They made two roster changes. They took out Reborn and Colin and added Beast and Ella, and they pretty much changed that team because they also, I don't know what happened in their infrastructure, but they also changed the idea of their lineup, their picks, their bans, everything about that team changed. So because they got that opportunity, because I think if they just played up against YG, Young Glory or World Elite Academy in an actual a tournament or something, they would have lost. They would have just gone straight back down to the LSPL. Mm-hmm. But they got that opportunity and they used it. Now they're third place. It's not going to stand, by the way, but they're in third place right now. So it's it comes to that same discussion about potential. You give YG or you give World Elite Academy is still there, but you give YG that same opportunity, would they still would they make anything out of it, or would they just still be at the bottom half of the LPL? And I don't know. That's why I'm for it. I don't know.
Yeah, that's fair. And you're optimistic. You believe in the potential for change, and you believe that teams who do get into the more competitively may take it more seriously. And obviously, Snake's doing pretty well, so it's a pretty good example. I love me some Snake. For those of you who watch the show and don't know, I'm not going to tell you they're going to finish first, but I do enjoy some Snake. All right, but let's stay on NA for a little bit longer before we jump into the eastern regions, I guess.
Okay, can I get my bid on the auto relegation quickly?
Yeah, sure, of course.
My thoughts on auto relegation is I'm okay with it if it worked like this. So the 10th place automatically gets relegated, but then they get pushed into the pool of people who have to requalify their way through the relegation tournament by fighting the bottom LCS teams. I think that would be interesting. Mm-hmm. You know how it is, the bottom three teams in NA, they get to choose the top three challenger teams to fight to try and stay in the LCS. Mm-hmm. What if the auto relegated team gets put into that pool?
Oh, okay, that's actually that's an interesting theory. That's actually really good.
So then it would be the top two challenger teams and them.
No, but then there's still the 10th place spot though, and then that could be played with the last leftover teams or something. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. So it'd be the 10th place, the team being played for relegation. Oh, so there would be 4 teams.
Yeah,
but how would that work? Because who would hold the 10
teams left out?
Oh yeah, okay.
No, so wouldn't it be the top 3 teams and then of the losers or something? They play a bracket for the 10th place team, 10th place slot.
Yeah, I guess
something like that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
All right. Well, okay. So structure aside, let's bring it back to NA as it exists, because I don't think we're going to see structural changes for the rest of the year. Maybe if this goes horribly awry or there's some big upset. But I think we've talked about this enough on previous episodes that I think we can say that we have a lot of ideas and that we want it to change to a certain degree.
Yeah, a little bit.
Tweaked. A little bit.
Not change, tweaked.
I want to talk about C9. Because they're bad right now. And they're not just a little bad, they're really bad. And they used to be really good, obviously. So what the hell is going on with C9? Right off the bat, they did well in one of their games. Surprisingly well with that Callista pick. Other than that, they've looked horrid. Just absolutely awful. And it's not like their pick bans are particularly bad either. So what is happening in these games that is making them lose so decisively?
Well, High's looked really off, right? Mm-hmm. That's what I would say. It's been and High, as it's been well publicly stated, is the shot caller, the in-game leader for that team. And if he's off, the team's off, and it looks like he's been off a lot in the first 2 weeks.
First week, they went 0-2 to 2-0. They looked pretty strong in the 2-0 part.
No, they didn't go 2-0. They went 1-2. I mean 1-1. They lost to CLG.
Yeah, currently
did they
they're
go
1-3.
1-1-1-1? I'm sorry, I'm thinking of.
They won 1-1 and 02. They're 1-3 right now. They're tied.
Oh
for last
right,
place.
I'm thinking of a different team. I'm sorry.
No problem, no problem.
Yeah. So they're like they just haven't looked great, you know. Like I think the only person on the team who's really been still proving that he's one of the top premier players at his position is Sneaky. I mean, even Medios hasn't looked quite as traditionally strong as he has, but Sneaky's been playing great. But I think everybody else needs to kind of step up their game a little bit, and I think the whole team synergy or the fact that the team shot calling is off is definitely, or the team like decision making and everything just looks off. Like they just look off a step. I don't know.
And I don't think it's wrong to attribute a lot of it to High, because I will say that the one game that they won, High was playing with Sandra mid, and he looked good that game. And suddenly, they looked way more decisive. And on paper, they're playing against Liquid. Keep this in mind. Liquid's team comp looked way better, admittedly, in my mind at least. I think you could argue either way. But if I remember correctly, it's like Gnar. They got Jarvan. They have like this excellent hard engage comp. And then on the opposite side, Cloud9 has this like kind of awkward pick comp with this Vi, with High on Lysandra, you know, and they played it very well. They forced small skirmishes. They consistently split Liquid up. They fought like good team fights, and played the game really well. And this is the one game where High does well in lane and High does well in the mid game as well. So it does feel like when High is performing well, his confidence goes up and his shot calling gets better. But the question is, can Cloud9 really afford to keep running High as their primary mid laner if he is such an emotional player? Like, especially when they're dropping games to teams with much less experience. I'll just phrase it that way.
Yeah.
It's a good discussion to have, but it's a costly discussion to have, because High, as poorly as he's doing right now, it's like it's always been posed like who is going to replace him, because you can find a really skilled mid laner to take his place. Let's say if Dig implodes, because you never know what's going to happen this week. If they just place Shifter on that team, like, do you think that's going to be any better? That's probably going to be worse.
No,
that would be worse. That's a good point.
Mm-hmm.
The problem with this is that, yes, High is the main shot caller. He is kind of the glue that keeps C9 together, whether or not he does well in lane. But the thing, and yes, it's a very core part of C9, their play and their identity. But one day, that shot calling isn't going to be good enough. And then when you like I said, who do you get to replace him? But at the same time, like, I'm worried in a way about High because C9's always been the team that bounces back pretty well, right? But right now, C9 is not even C9. High has taken so much fire in the past few months, ever since Worlds. I'm curious if or worried rather, if the seeds of doubt have been so deep in his mind by now. What if he starts tilting easier? What if he doesn't? What if he stops recovering?
So here's the thing. Whatever. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think the only thing we have to keep in mind is that we are rushing a little bit. Yes, it's an uncharacteristic 2 weeks, but I mean, think about it. This is
only
a super
2 weeks.
week. Yeah, this is super. I mean, we're used to 2 weeks being a lot because we used to have a super week, but now we don't, right? Now it's just, we basically have played the super week of LCS, and he didn't perform. But that doesn't necessarily mean that he's we have to get rid of High now. I think if halfway through the season he's still the same way, then this discussion becomes very legitimate. But until then, with how long he's been playing well and being a very solid member of the team, I think it would be a little bit quick to rush to that conversation, personally.
But I remember, because Dave, you made a really good point before the show even started, because we're probably going to talk about it later on about crumbs. But something that we should I even bring it up?
Go for it.
Go ahead.
Let's just stop. C9. I feel like we talked about enough.
Yeah,
and
it's a good segue, because it really does
we can tie it into the dig.
Because Crumbs had a video in which he spoke about leadership, and he spoke about the importance of leadership and the environment that creates that. And of course, he also spoke to a larger issue about player mentality. Which is it's a very sad video if you want to watch it. It's very nice. Because he's wow, that's a
It's very sad. It's very nice.
It's very nice.
It's a very well put together video.
There you go.
By Crumbs.
It's very sad.
He makes good points, but it is overall has a sad. We get what you're saying.
Okay, thank you.
Ha! Crumbs is leaving Dignitas. What a loser.
Wow, I suck.
Direct quote from Raz. Sorry, continue.
But yeah, a point he makes is that, like, of course, that hearing criticisms from fans, from, like, I guess critics like Monty's or whoever, that's one thing. Like, that's something, of course, they see that from Twitter, blah, 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 like, they get it. It's easy for them to ignore that once they create a thick skin. Once they have a thick skin, that's the easy part. It's difficult when it, like, actually sows itself into your own team. And so, like, we don't know about the mentality of what's going on in Cloud9, but that it can be said that his team didn't have faith in, like, Crumbs. And if his team didn't have faith in Crumbs and his ability to play as a jungler, and if, like, of course, Crumbs didn't have faith in his own team, then, like, that's when you lose faith, that's when you tilt, that's when you lose, like, that's when you lose confidence in your own ability. That's the worst part about that. Yeah. So, like, I can see that happening to, like, Kai. Like, I don't know what's happening in team dynamic of, like, Cloud9, but if, like, he's been hearing that shit since day one about his inability to play in a world setting, let alone now even in his own region because of the scaling of the mid laners that's coming up. Mm-hmm. But now, like, what's happening in his own team? Like, his team is losing now. Like, these are not good weeks that are coming in, and it's mostly off the back of his own failures. Is it because of his own tilting? Does he lose faith in himself because his team has lost faith in him? That's a big issue that I see. And of course Crumbs makes that issue, and it's a lot more prevalent. It's the same relevance because they're both team captains. Mm-hmm. And being leading that team and having that problem remain, that's some shit right there. I'm sorry. Well, okay. Like, that's gonna really weigh on you.
And I think if the same thing is happening on Cloud9, regardless of what Cloud9 decides to do, right?
Yeah.
This problem specifically, Crumbs decided to leave, right? Like, Crumbs is like, I don't have time to solve this. We can't solve this. I don't know how to solve this. And that's fine. And I think that's respectable because you're right. It is a huge issue and it is going to negatively influence the team as a whole. Yeah. But Cloud9, if they want to keep this core roster or not, either way, whatever their solution is it's going to take time. Like, they're going to be bad this split if the issue is as bad as it was on Dignitas. They are going to suck. But if they focus on improving that team and improving that interaction and trusting each other, they may be better next split. My concern is if they replace High immediately, right, because he's not performing, they're just going to be bad for the rest of the split, and it might not get better next split.
Exactly.
And if, like, it's no matter what happens, this is Cloud9 is like Dignitas. Cloud9 is going to be bad this split, and it's just making sure that they use this split to improve their team comms, improve the team, relationships, improve those interpersonal things, so that they can come back next split and do well.
And I don't want to even compare them directly to Dignitas because Cloud9 is a better team. They're just significantly better. Their worries has just been like, oh, now we're in the world setting and we have this problem. But now that's probably, like, bled into their own scene because of the competition. But we'll see. Like, it's going to be interesting to see how that works out.
To kind of build on Raz's point, I don't want to beat this to a dead horse. But I'm not even sure if it's 100% like the team has lost faith in High or anything. But High has had to, like, sit through the garbage on top of the 2 articles where Dade was rumored to come in to replace High at one point. And then there was an article. I'm really tired. Daily Dash just wrote another article recently about how there was a European player about to come over and coach, and he wants to come over to help coach C9 under the premise that he'll replace High or something. Who was that again?
I have no idea.
I can't remember.
I did not see that article at all. But either way, I mean, that's just more shit that High has to put up.
I'm gonna look it up.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, you might as well. Google's.
Someone is saying innovation. Question mark? Question mark?
I haven't heard anything about this. But while he looks this up, let's talk a little bit more about Dignitas. Obviously, we know why Crumbs left. How do we feel about the rest of the Dignitas roster? Do we, once again, I think we have the case of, like, just importing players from Korea, assuming it's the best, and now we have a roster with some of the worst communication we've ever seen, and really lackluster macro strategy. Do you think this is something Dignitas is going to be able to come back from, or is Dig, like, just
Someone's saying
done.
it's incarnation, by the way. And by the way, Dignitas is a team that I have a lot of problems with when it comes to just scouting. When it comes to just simply their own faith in a coach. Holy moly! Like
Yeah, it's
that
incarnation.
team. Like, okay, it is incarnation.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just like Dignitas as a team. I'm not saying anything badly about Core JJ or Gamsu. I think they're great players. I think they are. It's just I feel like getting those players with no infrastructure on that team, that's basically making the same mistake CLG made last split. Like Core JJ probably has the same, like he has decent English, like that's not a big deal. I think he's okay. It's just having a decent team environment is extremely important when you're going out and getting like foreign talent. Like that's a big issue, and that's a thing that China has done really well with, by the way, because they have translators. They have like they bring them in a package like with like other Korean players. So like, oh hey, you know what? You're not going to be sad.
And from what I've seen, they have tutors that are teaching players Chinese. They're very on top of it. There's constant exposure to China or Chinese. They like make the effort for the players to feel welcome. And you hear all these rumors, especially in China, about like these sketchy environments and these sketchy plans for players, but like they're already doing better than NA is, which is ridiculous to me.
Like China just has better, like 100% better infrastructure when it comes to like accommodating like Korean players. And then so you see like Dignitas is like, yes, I see how it's gone with Surf. They're like, horrible team environment, perfect. You know who I'm getting? 2 Koreans. That's gonna solve this problem. Like, let's get a second one, boys. Like,
Oh my god.
They'll keep each other happy.
I don't want to compare it to this, but it's like when your parents decide to have another kid so that you the son has someone to play with. They're like, we really just,
Yeah.
And obviously, Dignitas is disappointing because there used to be a team I like enjoyed. I mean, I've never been a huge Dig fan, but obviously they were good for a long time. And I loved Crumb's last season was one of my favorite junglers. Prior seasons, not so much. But last season I really loved him. I loved his vision control. I loved his play style, and it's like really sad for me to see him go. And now what remains of Dignitas is like it's nothing comparatively, right? Like there's nothing left of the Dignitas we once knew for all intents and purposes.
Well, it's funny. I actually wrote an article about this like a year ago, saying that like Dignitas would never be great. It was before the TSM series. I said that they would basically never be great with that roster because that roster was too fun-loving and adorable. Like everybody like loved, you know what I mean? Like they were just like really enticing to fans, and they had great, very lovable. And then the problem was though that they weren't real, like true fiery competitors that wanted to win no matter what. They would be like, it was like Skara and Cutie Pie, and they were just having fun. But when replacing those guys, you basically give up huge cash cows in popularity and marketability. And now you've kind of lost the identity of your team, and you were not getting results. So if I was Odie, I'd be pretty worried right now because you don't really like what are you holding on to at the moment? Not much, right?
Well, they did also lose their CS:GO team to TSM, I think.
Yeah. So I mean, Odie's in a I don't even.
Like I understand that the biggest problem. I like Odie. I like a lot of people. It just comes down to philosophy and how you think a team is going to be run. And I think like they put in a lot of money on Zion, and I don't even think that's correct. Like having players is one thing. Having great players is like you'd love to have amazing players for a team. Sure, perfectly fine. Like you need a structure for that team. The coach is something you should be valuing the most for that team. Not only a coach, but like you got to build off of that as well. Analysts, etc., etc. Like if you're gonna bring in like Koreans, you gotta have translators. You gotta have a lot more in terms of structure, and that means you have to spend a lot more money on behind the scene rather than what's up front, what everyone sees. And so, like I guess it's just wrong priorities. That's what it comes down to. And it's like I don't know what else to say about that. Like it's 100% wrong priorities.
Yeah.
And so, of course, now we see like the coaching thing. Thing that's gone out there.
Public posts like, "Hey, we want to coach," and like Fnatic did it, but Fnatic did it before the split started, And
yeah, they also didn't say you have to be like available to fly out this week and ready to start right away.
Like Jesus, what are they putting onto this coach? Like
that is so
they
much
just want to
pressure.
ship in this coach. They just need someone to just place in front of the cameras because he's not going to be doing any work for that 1 week. Like,
this isn't StarCraft 2 where you can just call down a mule and have it mine the minerals like your ASAP for you. This is a whole different this is a commander job.
I'm just expecting
Not the
for them to
minion.
not be.
all right, okay. All right.
I'm just expecting for them to like find no one, get to the LCS stage, look in the crowd, and then just pick out that one fan. Is like, hey, you want to be a coach for today? I gotcha.
So you know how that fantasy where Cutie Pie's in the audience stands up, rips off his like coat to find the dung tester shirt, walks up. It's like, all right, boys, lock in the Urgot jungle.
Oh my god.
All right. Your semi-erotic Dignitas fantasies aside.
What? What's wrong with that? I'm not a Cutie Pie fanboy.
God Jungle's magical. Cutie Pie's a gorgeous man. All right, Dignitas done.
Hey man, I subscribed to that man for like a year.
Gravity's done. Let's talk about Liquid. I don't care about TSM, quite frankly, but if you guys want to talk about TSM, we can.
I don't know.
Liquid. Let's talk about Piglet. What happened this week? 0-2 for Liquid, right? Or 1-1.
0-2.
The first game,
they did
the first game
0-2
wasn't even
to
his
0-2.
fault. I mean, that comp that they played into was just absolutely ridiculous. Like there was a Lissandra, Annie, Vi, and he was playing Sivir. So like you're literally just like
it was not the comp.
Like,
I don't think it was the comp so much as the fact that they didn't go for a lane swap. Like playing Sivir,
that too.
Sivir into what was it, Annie, Callista? Holy shit, that's like playing
like
Vayne into
Annie
old
something.
Caitlyn pre-nerfs. That's ridiculous.
And remember that I do think, or that I said earlier that I think that Team Liquid had the better comp. I like the Sivir comps better. But I will say that, the Callista lane was an interesting choice. Like, I don't know
They
that
needed the lane swap.
but obviously Annie's insane and insanely powerful, and you have to be careful around the Annie pick.
The biggest thing about the Callista pick is that like you cannot predict when she's going to use Ren. So like Sivir's
there's no
ability
free
to, like,
indicator.
Useless.
Yeah. And
So like
really
that's
tricky.
so you're
Even
saying-
Kennan's W, he grunts or something before it procs.
Mhm.
So even then there's like even some kind of indicator, but there's nothing for Callista.
And to be fair, Ken and W, I mean, if you have 2 Mark of the Storms, you just fucking spell.
Yeah,
kill them
exactly.
all
You
the way.
know
Like,
to
Callista,
move
you
away.
have 50 Ren stacks on you. You're like,
When is
I'm
she-
probably dead.
51, 52. What is she gonna do? Now I'm dead now. Like, she's
You're like,
51.
you're just saying hut over and over again. You don't know when the hell you're gonna snap the ball.
Sneaky always pops it at 50 stacks, boys. Every time. It's his one weakness. We know how to stop this lane. Like,
And then that one time he does it at 49. Oh shit.
okay, so laning phase aside, one thing I want to note is that Liquid has only done well so far with one team comp, and that's the protect the carry team comp, right? Like the Lulu top, the Janna support, the Nunu jungle. Like
That was also with a
some-
different carry though, different AD carry.
No, yeah, no. Sometimes like
But I mean,
Caitlyn. I mean,
Keith is and Keith is arguably worse than Piglet, so you'd think that they should be able to do that even better with Piglet than Keith, right? You'd think.
except
Well,
I think
Well,
Keith-
I wouldn't really say there was the proof that he's like undeniably worse than him.
I think me and Raz are gonna say the same thing, but Keith can
Yeah.
speak English, and English is important.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
There's that. Keith has the mechanics of remembering about his masteries. Like he just like
Oh wow!
Mastering mechanics.
they're
God.
you forget about.
It's always possible. Well, Piglet seemed confused. It's always possible that A, he did forget, or B, he didn't hit save masteries.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't believe he played with 30. No masteries. That's so ridiculous. Like, that's so much sustain and lane, like extra defense, oh my god.
It's so important.
So much
He's
extra
going
damage.
lane. Like, geez, you need the masteries. If not just like lane swapping, you need the masteries.
There's
So
a reason why smurfing is hell when you don't have any runes at level 1.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Can't last it worth shit.
It's a lot of stats. It's a lot of stats. It's like 2K, 3K gold worth of stats
Something
between
like
runes
that,
and
yeah.
masteries. It's like
Yeah.
it is a lot.
I think he had runes, just not masters.
Yeah, but I mean, I used Season 3, I knew the specifics. I have not kept up since Season 4 and Season 5 as to like what the gold value for each mastery point is. But it's a lot. It's a lot of gold. Like it's a humongous difference. It's like 2 or 3 levels worth of stats easily. But even that aside, I don't think Piglet's team play looked that phenomenal. Obviously, he farmed very well both games. If we just jump over to the other game that they played, where he was on Caitlyn, sort of a scaling 80 carry. Piglet kind of farmed all game. Piglet didn't really push down towers in the early game. Piglet didn't like force a game to mid game really early, which I think is one of the bigger strengths of the Caitlyn pick. Yeah. Is like you can just push down towers really early because of that superior range.
How much of that is him, and how much of that is Dominate calling the shots, though, right? Because like the 80 carries, Piglet's generally not like saying where to be. Like that's generally on the shot caller to understand that I have the Caitlyn and utilize that more so than it's on the 80 carry to be like, okay, we're doing this.
Yeah, well, and
I would think.
And they have the Nunu too. So their early game for tower pushing and objective control is absurdly powerful, right?
Yeah.
Here's the thing that happened in the game, and this is the point where I like lost a lot of faith in Liquid. TSM swaps lanes late. They are so determined not to put Tristana versus Caitlyn that they take a huge XP disadvantage, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Nothing fucking happens from that. Absolutely no punishment of any kind occurs at all. At all. And this is absurd to me because all of these players know better than that. Like, never in any other... Well, okay. I would like to think that in any other game, teams would have been smart enough to be like, well, that Tristana is going to be level 1 for a while. Let's either A, dive her, or force an objective anywhere on the map. Like, you have a Nunu. You know what I mean? Like, you can force a turret. You could probably, honestly, you could force a sloppy dragon if you wanted to, and you'd come out on top. Like... Yeah. They gave up like two or three characters did not hit level 2 for like 30 or 45 seconds longer than they needed to. That's a huge power spike. Like that's an immense difference in power. That means that for a while, functionally, Team Liquid was twice the strength of TSM in a 5v5 team fight. Obviously, that didn't happen, but I was super disappointed.
To me, it looked like Liquid was almost like I feel like they came off such a strong performance in week 1 that they were almost a little bit relaxed, I guess is the best word to say. Like they weren't playing with a sense of urgency in game. Like I almost felt like the reason like they didn't capitalize on that because they were kind of just saying like, oh, we can win this game. It doesn't matter if we don't take this advantage right away. Whereas a good team should be forcing the advantage every single time they can get one, right? But it almost just looked like they just weren't playing with the same urgency that they were in week 1. I don't know. It's hard. They weren't as decisive. Something looked different.
So can we chalk this up purely to communication issues, purely to this new team dynamic with Piglet? It obviously is very different. But at the same time, Keith came in with almost no experience on the team and did very well. Obviously, English makes that adjustment a lot easier, but let's just say, where do we see Liquid finishing in 2 weeks? Like, do we think this is going to get solved, or is this going to be a whole split issue where they spend the entire split trying to get better communication on the team?
Before that even being said, who else did Liquid face in week 1? They faced TIP, and who else was it?
TIP and I don't even remember at this point.
Like I felt like their week 1 games were pretty much linear.
They didn't fight impressive teams, that's for sure. I'm trying to remember who it was in week 1 though.
So like just to make that point, I felt like they had a very weird team comp, like just a protection comp for one of the games,
CLG.
The tip game. Oh, and CLG. Okay.
CLG with 2 subs.
Okay, with 2 subs. Like I just felt like that was easier for them. It was. And so like they even had a weird team protection comp, protect like the Kog'Maw comp, and it was like, and Team Impulse handled that extremely poorly, and so it just felt like you couldn't really get much out of that.
Team Impulse also had subs that time too.
Yeah, definitely. So
they were fighting cripple teams in week 1.
Yeah, so I wouldn't even say that Keith is better in any respect. I just felt like the teams that they faced. They finally faced teams up to par to them and didn't show much.
So as to where they're going to finish, something like, I would say in the top 4, top 5. I have some faith in this team. I do. I think they'll persevere.
Okay. I think that's fair. I'm not sure. So I said specifically we were going to avoid Winter Fox, TIP, and pretty much the rest, and Coast. For those of you wondering why we haven't really talked about those teams yet, mostly because I haven't seen enough to be impressed either way, and I think that none of these teams have existed long enough in their current state for us to really talk about them. But TSM obviously is doing pretty well. as is CLG. So CLG, I will say, is the next team I personally would like to talk about.
Yeah, me too. They're the most surprising one.
Yeah.
Because TSM, I think you could predict to do 3-1 at the start. You know, like Santorin meshed well. They're a good team.
I don't really know if it was surprising for me, at least.
For CLG?
CLG.
I thought CLG, okay. Well, I thought Aframu played out of his freaking mind this week. Like, his blitz hooks and his Morgana bindings were unbelievable.
Aframu is amazing.
Aframu is a god. Oh.
But my experience with CLG as a fan, as a big CLG fan, is akin to a giant domestic abuse case. And that's a horrible reference, so I'm going to not go any further with that. But every time they promise me good results and they're like, we're finally a top team, they fuck it up. They fuck it up. They hurt me again. I'm sad on the inside. You know what I mean? Like, they never do... they never do well consistently. Like, that's the one thing that CLG has never done, is like win games consistently, right? Like, yeah, they have a good week now. Yeah, their team looks strong, and Aframu is looking like a god, quite frankly. Like, you're right, his play was phenomenal. Those picks, the Morgana play especially, I thought the blitz play was good, but I think I could chalk it more up to the enemy team not really being used to playing against a blitz.
Well, the flash blitz hook with the Callista ult, come on.
That was cool. Yeah, that was cool.
I think that's tight as fuck, don't get me wrong, but I think that's like a one of two of thing. Like, I don't think that right there defines Aframu's career.
No, but he still got to do it in an LCS game, so I was pretty, because they were talking about it, I'm like, he won't get to pull that off in an LCS game. These guys will be aware of it. Nope. Still got it.
I mean, it's hard to interrupt. It's a flash
I gotta
hook.
say, the freedom that team has with themselves, because I remember, like, you go back when they had Seraph, and Seraph was, like, obviously such a big Nidalee player, and he even said that, like, yeah, they won't let me play this champion. Like, they won't let, like, he does really well with it in scrims, and it's like, yeah, they don't, it's just, like, the team will limit themselves in that sense when it comes to compositions. And then now you just see them going all out. Like, they don't give a damn what they're playing. And obviously that's really good, but you pick a Blitzcrank, and your team better have a lot of faith in you to, like, play that champion.
It's not like Thresh where you miss the hook and you're completely useless.
Yeah.
For Blitz, you kind of are. Other than the
people
sounds.
run the Callista comp.
Well, that's the thing, is the Callista, the nice thing about the Callista with the Blitz pick is you can just throw Blitz into the middle of the team, right? And he can ult, and he can do all the work he would normally do, but in the middle of the team. So that silence does a lot of work. So I feel like by picking Blitz and Callista, you do eliminate a lot of weaknesses that Blitzcrank has. You also get to do that wonderful Ballista comp, or whatever you want to call it, that's just so... I mean, it's awesome. Visually, it's awesome. It's the same thing as, like, the Alistair Oriana combo. Like, CLG loves their cheesy but awesome strats. I'll be honest. Part of the reason I still love the team. But, like, Link still is kind of sketchy. You know, like, I don't think the top lane is too solid. I haven't been... Or Zion's solid, I guess. It's not fair. I get, you know, Xmithy... There's just a lot of questions left to be answered. But do you think that, like, this is finally the CLG lineup that will win games consistently? Even against lower teams. Let's just say against lower teams.
I will not say anything until I see it.
I will say something because I feel like I can talk to certain positions. Like, CLG definitely learned a lesson when it came to synergy. They did. Like, they had to learn that one, a rough lesson there. But it comes to, is this specific team going to work? We all know, like, we all have our problems with Zion. A lot of people can have a lot of good things to say about Xmithy, but I feel like Xmithy is a champ. Like, he's always been that jungler. Even at his peak, when he was with Vulcan, he was a great mechanical jungler. He was probably the best jungler in NA. And he was a world-class jungler. And it came to, well, who's going to be making the shot calling? He is, and his decisions were poor. So let's just hope, and I guess he's going to be that mechanical. Like, I don't have a lot of hopes when it comes to putting him on the world stage. And so I don't know. Are they going to be a first place team is my question, or are they going to be like a third place team? Because I don't think.
But you think they'll get to Worlds?
Yeah, they will get to Worlds.
You think so? Really?
Actually, it's just the spring. Actually, you can't. I can't even say that.
We're 4 games into the LCS.
Let's say.
Hold on.
Regardless, do you think they'll finish top 3? Let's
no,
say
I don't think so. When I said that, I wasn't surprised that they're looking good right now. Here's why. Historically, in the LCS, CLG will get like a 50% win rate in the regular season. And here's the thing. To CLG, most teams are like, you know, like in scrims, the X team, X, Y, and Z team look really, really good in scrims, whatever. And you've all learned by now, scrims mean jack shit when it comes to like actual competitive games, right? But to me, for CLG, scrims are their regular season. Their regular seasons mean jack shit to me in every split they have ever competed in with any roster that they've ever fielded onto the team, because they always get a 50% fucking win rate, and then they will lose in the playoff series. They don't do well in sets. They flop in every set. They tilt somehow. They lose one game and then they're broken. Their comms are dead silent. Their regular split team games mean jack shit to me now. Those are the scrims for CLG for all of us to see. So. And they always do good in best of ones, maybe because they're low pressure. Maybe because they're just worth 1 point out of 28 games in previous seasons. It's much less now. But you get my point. These best of ones are so low pressure to CLG that they can't possibly tilt after one game unless it's a super week or something. So, no. I don't... Until I see them do well in best of 3s, best of 5s, I don't think they're getting top 3. It doesn't matter what roster they have.
That's really fair. That's really fair.
Okay. Is there anything? Okay, so let's close out NA. Mostly not because I don't think that TSM has a few talking points, but mostly because we've gone on for a while about NA, and I think we've talked a lot about the structural issues, and no one wants to hear us talk about Winter Fox or TIP. Let's go to the Eastern regions. Let's start before we let Raz talk to us for an hour straight about LPL. Let's start with LCK. Let's start with OGN Korea. GE Tigers are undefeated. Former Najin Blacksword plus Smeb is undefeated in Korea. Would anyone have predicted this at the start?
Nope, I didn't.
No.
And I mean, they're good. They're not even like, and they've done the full rotation. Like they've done the whole schedule. They've proved themselves against just about everybody or everybody. I can't remember if they've played. I'm pretty sure they've played everyone at this stage. Yeah, and they've won. They've come out on top. And additionally, more surprising than that even, is that CJ and Jin Air are in 2nd and 3rd place.
God bless CJ. Mad Life has come back.
Mad Life.
Ambition doesn't feed. Everything I know about Ambition is wrong.
Here's my theory on Ambition.
He's
doing really good. He's doing really good in jungle. I think I know why. It's because he gives up first blood in mid lane so much. He knows exactly how to get first blood. Like he's like, I've done this before. You're dead. That's my theory.
You see him like in the booth stroking his beard with experience. He's like,
I've seen this before. This is exactly what I did in like that one game against like KT or SKT like 3 months ago. Like I know what to do now.
Coco just looks at him. He's like, "What do I do here?" He's like, "I've been through it 50 games before. I'll be there in the 3 minutes and 20 seconds. I'll be there." You're like, what?
He's the guy in the trench coat in the back alley. He's like, "I got this." But only for a mid laner. Like that's a specialty.
Yeah.
Like, when he can't fake her that one game, that was great.
Yeah. Oh my god.
I don't feel like you're wrong, which is the worst part. I feel like all of Ambition's experience losing has taught him exactly where he needs to be.
He gets like these Vietnam flashbacks, and it's like,
you guys don't understand. I've been ganked by the best of them.
Now you'll know my pain.
I know exactly where I need to be.
The real fire, the real CJ blazes within his heart,
like,
man. He's like unleashing his rage on Faker, man. You just see whenever like Faker died in mid lane, they would like take a look back at the booth and just the pure frustration in Faker. You just be like, he'd just like be so, he'd be so goddamn pissed. It was glorious. So many people in Twitch chat were just like felt instant gratification because everybody loves Faker.
And I wonder what's going on. I want to know what's going on in their mind when they get killed by Ambition. They're like, this is the guy I used to shit on 1v1.
Yeah. Faker's probably like, if you ever you'll never first blood me, Ambition. It'll never fucking happen. Like, you're such a piece of shit. And Ambition's like, oh yeah, bitch.
Say that one more time. Say that one more time.
Jungle nerd. Like,
basically, after every one of those games where he gets first blooded, he writes down in his like little black book, Faker, Easy Hoon.
I swear that entire game, like everyone was trying, like Coco was trying to get into comms, like trying to tell him what to do, and he looks to his left, and like his headphones not even connected to the computer, it's connected to his iPod. He's listening to like "Welcome to the Jungle." He's like just blasting the shit out of it.
Okay, this wonderful tangent, by the way, my favorite thing to come out of this show ever. This has been magical. Why is SKT doing so poorly? What the hell is
they
going on with
keep first
SKT?
picking Xerath.
All right. I'm gonna let you guys get control. I'll take this one for a second. So SKT 3-2. They keep trying to force these team comps based around like Xerath, Sivir, and aggressive engaged jungler. So for those of you who aren't familiar, it's like the not the Sivir comp where we see the 5-man team fight using the ult, more of the one where we have like really strong power and 2 or 3 champions, and they try to force small skirmishes. And SKT, for whatever reason, loves this fucking comp. They play it constantly, and it never works. All of their wins, they're not playing this comp. So I don't understand if this is Kakoma, like, just not communicating well to the team on how to play this comp, if the team's not getting it, or if Kakoma's like, yeah, we've got time, we've got a regular comp to back it up, and he just really wants to make this thing. I don't get it. I just don't understand. So, I mean, from what you guys have seen, what do you think is the issue here? Do you think it's the comp? Is it the pick ban? Is Faker not performing? Because honestly, EasyHoon's doing pretty well, despite the fact that SKT is losing.
Well, Xerath mid first is strange.
Yeah. Well, okay. Draft phase aside, I don't know. When I look at the team, it feels like 50% of the time they play as like a well-oiled machine. The other 50% of the time they play like Haywyre used to have 8 turrets, but like they don't function as one like moving unit. You know what I mean? Like they just kind of like do their own thing. Like I don't know. It just feels like half the time they're a team. The other half the time they're trying to figure out how to win. I don't know.
No, that makes sense. I think that it doesn't look coordinated, and we have on paper with Faker on the team just an insanely powerful roster. We've got Marin, who in the past has been this incredibly dominant top laner.
He's playing really well this season.
Very aggressive. You know, no longer held back by EasyHoon and EasyHoon's determination to never push a lane in. Like, is paired with Faker now. So you have this, like, double threat. All Bangi has to do is exist between those 2 lanes, and he can counter gank effortlessly because a jungler has to go there. And yet, it never comes through. I mean, we see EasyHoon picked, and honestly, okay, so EasyHoon is pretty much consistently playing in the first game of every set, right? Which I don't actually have a problem with if we're talking about EasyHoon in a vacuum. EasyHoon has gotten much better this season. His Cassiopeia play was really fun to watch. Just as a side note, he flashed aggressively, people. It was impressive. That was not this week, but the previous week. He's not a bad player. Like, he does well for the team. The issue is his play style innately fucks Marin. Marin is doomed to lose top lane in any game with EasyHoon, in theory, right? So I don't understand why they keep fielding EasyHoon. Not that it would not be an issue if they had Impact still, right? Because Impact is just a much more passive laner in general. But with Marin, an aggressive laner, you need some way to balance that out. And Bangi, when he's not playing Warwick and camping top when there's a Lissandra, is very rarely there for Marin in a way that is productive. So it feels to me like SKT is like lost, and it feels like they're taking too much time experimenting with new things.
Yeah, and as good as EasyHoon is, it's really hard to ever justify starting him over Faker, right? Like, how do you, like, against most other players, it would be very easy to say, oh yeah, EasyHoon, you can start him, you can play him after games or whatever. But when you have Faker as your other option, it's like, I think I'm going to go with Faker 105% of the time.
I'm trying to think of like the possible reasons for fielding EasyHoon. The only one I can possibly think of is maybe EasyHoon brings a different kind of team dynamic to the communications and the kind of strategies they employ. I mean, I don't know so much about EasyHoon other than the fact that, yes, he played a lot of Ziggs last season. He was a pretty passive player, but I also know that before that he was a very, very skilled Karthus. I know that apparently in scrims last season between S and K, Faker and EasyHoon in the 1v1 lane mid went pretty even. So given the facts, I have to assume it has something to do with the presence that Easyhoon brings to the team compared to Faker. Like, yes, Faker's a better player, like mechanically, like in the 1v1, whatever. But I'm inclined to give Koma some kind of faith here of why he keeps fielding Easyhoon. It hasn't paid off yet, but
all right,
it has to be some kind of team dynamic.
Okay.
There's a lot of things that go into it, and honestly, like I even remember, like I think it was Impact who, when asked about a Faker, and he says that he got angry easily, or not easily, but like it was easy to make him angry. Yeah, frustrated, and so like team dynamic is very, very important. You don't know those players, like who they're like, what their personalities are like, and what they bring in terms of like, I guess just an environment, a positive environment. So you never know. And Easyhoon did have some great games, but it's like it just comes down to the very, very specific point that synergy is important, because this is a team game. And if you're going to be swapping out players, especially your mid laner, the most important role that connects, like
mid laner's the control tower.
Yeah, it's the control tower. You control the tempo of the game from the top lane to the bottom lane based on how you do in your lane. Like you can like roam with your jungler, etc., etc. Like it is so important, and they're losing synergy off of it because they're swapping between two players.
Yeah, it's too often.
I never like that.
Like it's the same kind of argument with Haywyre, isn't it? Like he is the control tower of C9, and regardless of how he is as a mechanical player, it is hard to swap that out. So it's exactly like Raz said. Like you swap out that control tower so many times, you're never gonna get that synergy off.
Yeah. Well, I think even if you look to I think even if you look to a team like to help you out real quick, like LGD, where they swap out Acorn and Flame, like I think they have problems with it too because they're such distinct top laners that it's almost like even though it's not as central as to the team as the mid lane position, it's like they play very differently with those two players in, right? And it forces the entire team to kind of adapt and play these very different styles. Now, if your team can do it, great. That gives you two really distinct versions and weapons and ways to attack. But that's asking a lot of your players, right? To adapt to two completely. Essentially, you're asking the rest of your roster to adapt to two variations of a team or to two slightly different teams. You know what I mean? Like.
Yeah, but here's my thing on that, because I think that LGD can get away with this because, of course, the skill of a player, Flame, Acorn, you can have that discussion that they're both highly skilled. But having the top lane get swapped out, like, as important as it is to have synergy with the top lane, because later on in the season, you'll just be like, TPing is extremely important, having that communication is there, but having the direct synergy with your top lane isn't as important. Like mid lane, jungle, that is the most important role in terms of early game synergy, or just like the reason why mid lane is so important, because it's like a catalyst in terms of the rotation. You can move with your jungler. It becomes a lot more easier to create that vision control in both sides, as well as really like strengthening your ganks depending on how you push up your wave. So it's really important in that sense. But the top lane, you're a lone wolf, so you have a little bit more leeway. So that's why I'm a little I don't care so much with LGD. But you go to your mid lane, and holy shit, that's important. Like, especially if you have a star mid laner, the best, like you can say the best player in the world. Like Jesus, like you need to. I don't know, man.
I think you make a valid point with the top lane, and I think that mid and jungle by nature are the two most mobile roles. They're mid especially is obviously the best position to be anywhere on the map at any given time, just because of the nature of where the lane is placed. And then jungle is the role that moves. Jungle is the role that rotates. That is the nature of jungle. I don't know, honestly. I don't think there's anything concrete about why SKT is fucking up, other than inconsistency, and what the actual problem is, I'm not sure. And this is one of the things about not speaking Korean, is if any player puts out anything, I have to wait for someone else to translate it. It's not like in NA where we have this diligent like group of people who are willing to post everything on Reddit so that I can see it easily and have insight into the team in that sense. But we'll have to see. The Paravine chat's going crazy. So let's talk about the other team that's been disappointing. The team that was ranked second coming into this. Yes, Najin.
Najin.
OQ doesn't see very much play. not that I'm surprised, because as much as I love OQ, the guy really does seem like he is the brainless AD carry who completely relies on someone else to tell him what to do. No, because here's the thing. OQ is a weapon. OQ is a strong weapon. OQ will kill anyone in front of him when he hits his power spike. He is mechanically a god. If you do not, I feel like if someone is not like, OQ, meet up the team. OQ, do this. OQ, do that. He sits in a lane and farms. That's it. That's all he does. That's it. And I think that's a general AD carry mentality, but it's not one you can really afford to have as much. I don't know. I haven't been impressed. I think he's paired well with Kane, but I just feel like a lot of the games he hasn't. When they win and he's playing, he's carrying every time.
Yeah.
But when they lose and he's playing, he's like got 300 CS and not doing anything. You know, it's. So
that was supposed to be like the what carried them. You know, there was a lot of hype around that Kane and OQ bot lane. That was supposed to be one of the strong points of Korea. Like that was one of the things everyone was like, oh yeah, look at these two. These guys will definitely show up, and it'll be their time to shine. And just kind of hasn't happened. You know, it's been a little weird. Go Tigers.
When people look at that,
pray.
Pray
and Gorilla.
Praise revenge. But like,
yeah, exactly.
Dude, whenever someone looked at Najin's roster, that is the roster to just like have a mind blown, because they have Duke in the top lane, just simply seen as like one of the best top laners in the scene. Like his
Gnar was fantastic earlier too. Yeah.
When he plays Gnar, when he plays Sion, he is on point. Like he plays anything, I think. Like Jax back in the day. And then you have the mid lane Goong, like who is like after
the king of assassins. I would say the second best mid laner. You know, coming into the season, like easily considered the second best.
And so like now that like the exodus happens of like all of the greatest mid laners just moving away to China, not the greatest, but like there's a lot of mid laners in China.
A lot of talent.
A lot of talent moving away. So you're like, wow, it feels like it's Goon's town now, along with Faker. So it's disappointing to see that the team isn't performing as well as expected, and it comes down to expectation, I guess. But like, yeah. I just hope that the team really focuses a lot more on, like, I guess OQ's new, so like once he gets that experience, it will turn around. I think that team still has that potential. God, I don't want to use that word anymore. Please help me.
Potential is oh god. Ever since Thorin put out that video, it's like sometimes I feel like there's a case to be made for potential, like based on previous results and team strengths, but it never seems to pan out.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think it's just because people overuse it, right? Like Reckless had potential. You know what I mean? Like Reckless was coming into the league. That's the guy who had potential. He had all these tournament victories already. He had already shown he could play. Like he had potential. You could realistically say he had a chance to prove that he was as good as people said and dominate the league. When you talk about like, you know, every new player who's ever joined the LCS having potential. Like, it's like, okay, you know, like, okay, so what? Just everybody who's ever played this game has the potential to be the best. And I mean, it makes sense why they say that, because they're kind of selling it as like, they've said that a lot of people who watch LCS in professional league, like a lot of people who watch it to improve. They learn, right? They want to learn tips for their own game and stuff like that. So they want to kind of sell it that, you can get better and you can improve and you can be the best player. If you keep playing, you can get to Diamond or you can get to Master. And that's just not the reality. Like everybody has a skill cap, right?
Yeah.
That's a good point.
All right. Who wants to talk about Samsung? Everybody's favorite team.
Whoa, Samsung, we're champions!
Samsung!
Anyway, Samsung sucks.
Oh, sorry, that was my Samsung phone.
Samsung Galaxy.
Yeah, I feel like they need to change their, like, I feel like Samsung should sell the team or like give it to one of their subsidiaries to brand for now, so that they don't disgrace the Samsung legacy like this, because this is terrible. You literally go from by far having you probably by far had the two best teams in the world. Like I think Blue would have got to the finals if they were on the other side of the bracket of Worlds, and instead of playing White in the semis. So you probably have the two best teams in the world, and then you go to a team that's 0-5.
The sad thing is you can have that discussion of like, well, just pay your players, and then you look at the competition of how much Chinese teams are paying them, and you're like,
never mind.
That's a lot of money.
Guys, we need to be just a little bit better than the Chinese, not way better than the Chinese, so no one tries to buy you next year, okay? Feel me?
But it is Samsung. Like, to be honest, if there's any organization that's in esports right now that could easily afford whatever price tag they wanted for players, like, I'm sure Samsung spends hundreds of millions of dollars on marketing worldwide.
Okay, hold on. Here's the thing.
Samsung
sponsors this team. They're not going to funnel all of their money into a team. It's not profitable. Meanwhile, the sons of billionaires in China actually have a lot of money, actually tangibly have a lot of money, and are happy to invest in League of Legends. There's a difference in the amount invested in the two countries, and I think that China leads by far, without a doubt.
But I mean,
also, Samsung didn't kind of historically haven't paid their players as well. I mean, even back in the Brood War. So this is an organization that prioritizes it much less. So they're not gonna just throw millions of fucking bucks at people to play for them.
Yeah, no, I realize that. It's just sad because Samsung could. You know, they easily have the bank account to do so. Yeah. They just choose not to. They don't prioritize it, as you put it.
So could the U.S. government, baby. It's not like we're in a bunch of debt.
Yeah, but the Samsung has a team already, you know, like non-debt.
And by the way, they have here's the saddest thing about this is that their players are good, or at least
Bliss is good. I love Bliss. Bliss has numerous weaknesses, but where the aspects of his play that are good, as in the laning phase and his damage calculations, are fucking flawless. Every one of those first bloods he gets in lanes, he gets them to literally, if he did not auto attack, if he did not ignite, if he did not stick around for half a second, they would have died. But he doesn't overkill by anything more than 50 damage. He kills them exactly every time, and it's fucking beautiful to watch. Downside, he gets camped now because people know that. People don't play as aggressive against him because they know that, and no one on that team has any fucking sense of macro strategy, so they're losing every game. I love that team. I love that team.
Oh my god, that team is such a tragedy, and it's because sure you can. It's such a tragedy. It's because you can have that cases well, they're not paying their players much. Look at these new players, you can't even talk shit about those players because those players are actually really good. Who the jungler is his name? Lee or Eve? I don't remember his name. Eve. Okay,
his name is Eve.
Because the reason why this is flipping confusing is because there is another player named Lee, and Eve is an amazing Lee Sin player. So it's I get confused so much. But okay, so his Lee Sin plays so Eve is a great mechanically skilled jungler. In my opinion, the best mechanically skilled jungler in the LCK. And then you have Bliss, who's great. He's shown some amazing plays in his own right. You go to the bottom lane and you have Fury, who everyone talks up because of course he's he's proven himself. I forget his look. He was a prime player, prime optimist. His name was Z Engine. There we go. That's his name. And they have proven players, or at least they've had players that can prove themselves, but their macro strategy is shit, and it's partly due to because their coaching staff just doesn't exist anymore, or at least it's not the same as the championship.
And here's the thing: this is how you know their coaching staff is doing something, though, is because they would have played pick comps in every single game if they could, because that's their strength, right? That's the one thing they can do reliably is pick comp and then team fight with an advantage, because they're all mechanically skilled players, right? And as long as they ward somewhere, they can get a pick. But they stopped playing those pick comps. They started diversifying. They started trying to play Sivir comps or team fight comps or comps that required more strategy than that. And they looked so uncomfortable, so off. And I'm not saying it's wrong for Samsung at this stage, knowing that their team is not going to finish anywhere important, to experiment and to push their players to do this. But you can see that it's not working. So something within the management needs to change, because this is why, and I agree with you that this team is a tragedy, because on paper, all of these players are phenomenal. And all it would take is one really good coach and probably a split of being horrible for them to be one of the best teams in Korea. That's my... I don't know if the change would be that sudden. I don't know how these players are on a personal level, but their in-game performance implies to me that if they can learn any kind of macro strategy, they would be a top team, without a doubt.
Yeah, 100%. I had this discussion with Dom. It just comes down to holy, like they need time. That's all they need, and like they need a lot of time, or like probably a split or two. But it's not going to be a fast change because these players have shown real strength. It's just not where it needs to be.
Yeah, if you could take them down, if they're like 10 out of 10 mechanical players, if you made them 8 out of 10 mechanical players and put those other 2 points into macro strategy, they would be a middle of the road team. But they're not.
They would be.
If only we could spec every player like this.
Yeah.
Pay $5 to respec your favorite pros.
Yeah. God, I wish.
If only, dude.
All right. I think that about closes it out from Korea. Does anyone else have anything they'd like to talk about, or any team that they wanted to mention a specific point about?
Nope, not really.
Yeah.
All right, guys. LPL. Pretty much our final, one of the final regions we're going to be talking about tonight, if not the final.
Yeah.
LPL Week 3. There's a shit ton of games in LPL, for those of you who aren't familiar with it. Raz here, we're lucky enough to have on tonight, is a LSPL expert and does obviously have a very wide knowledge of LPL as well. And the first team we're going to talk about tonight, we've talked about them a little bit already, is Snake. My favorite team. So tell us a little bit about Snake. I know you talked about a little bit about it earlier, but I don't want to give you the most biased Snake presentation of all time. So I'm going to let you do it, Raz, since you're
right.
you have a much more down-to-earth perspective on Snake.
My Snake bias would be in the opposite direction because I've shit-talked this team for a long time. Because I thought that this team had so many problems going in, of course, as I said earlier, and then they got Beast and Ella. Fast forward, of course, Beast and Ella. I've always been like, I've always been kind of like taken aback because like this is not the change they need. Like having their jungler and support player be Korean, they just need to like have a decent coaching staff in that sense. But they've done a lot, and what I mean by a lot is they play swords.
For the first 15 minutes, their wards are fucking beautiful. Seriously, if you want to see like perfect, I don't want to say Mata Dandy level warding in the early game, like Season 4 Mata Dandy, not whatever they're doing on Vici right now. Like watch these games. Like their early game is immaculate. The way they move around the map, their pressure is beautiful.
Yeah.
And to be fair, I haven't watched a lot of Snake in the past. I've watched mostly this current rendition of Snake, and I've watched a few more VODs just to make sure I get myself on exactly how horrible they used to be. But they look good. I mean, it goes to shit after that first 15 minutes, but they look fabulous. It's like an excellent team to watch for early game strategy.
Yeah, they definitely, like, I said it I love this tweet, and I made it, and I'm so proud of it. It's like my little child, is that, like, anyone who says that 75 gold like that's how much you need for a ward is wrong, because like these Korean players, like they've invested a lot for these guys, and that's what they've been doing really well with it. Beast is probably one of the best players in, like, not the best players, I mean like one player to talk about, because his champion pool is so good. It's such a breath of fresh air, because Reborn would just play Lee Sin and Elise, and he's done. And so like you go on to Beast and he's like, oh, okay, I'm playing Nunu this game, which works really well with your shitty playstyle, Crystal. Like, oh, you want to play Tristana? Okay, I'm playing I'm gonna protect you really. I'm gonna do my best to make sure you don't die.
So for those of you who aren't familiar with Crystal, this is how I characterize Crystal. Crystal is the version of Uzi and Imp, you know, where Uzi and Imp want to win the trade, where like it's a exchange where they have a 20% chance to come out on top, but they'll take it because they have their faith in their mechanics. Crystal needs a 10% chance, and Crystal's not as mechanically good as Uzi or Imp, but thinks he is. So he feeds or he carries.
Yeah. His Draven game against LGD was unbelievable.
I mean, but he's not good. Understand is more of a liability than
he's a wild card.
But
he's been growing. Like I'm kind of waiting, because I feel like when I talk about growth and Snake in the same sentence, I gotta like wait for them, because they've showed something that I was not expecting, in the sense that like they know what their problems are and they're willing to fix it. And so now they still have a lot of problems. I can't even say that. They have I don't want to sound like a hater, because of course they're in third place. A lot of people are going to be looking at that placement, and they're going to be looking at what I'm saying. It's like, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. So their problems are this. Baka, formerly known as Copy, is a one-trick pony. He plays wave clear champ, mages, and then you put him on another champion, and he does nothing. He plays Xerath. He used to play a shitload of Ziggs when he had the chance, but then Xerath became a better champion, and Ziggs became a worse champion due to the buffs and respective nerfs. And so he's like, okay, now I'm a Xerath player. And so when he plays Xerath, he plays well. Like he will, and it's so funny.
Like he plays so well.
He's amazing, and then teams will be like, he plays Xerath. Like, what should we do? I'm gonna play Cassiopeia. Like Chinese teams, for a good while, have not played against it properly, and so you have those problems where you're like,
no, here's the best part. It's not even that they don't play against it properly. They won't ban it. The man has a one champion pool, one champion pool, and is a very crucial part of the team succeeding. And they opt to ban to triple ban Flandre and Beast, right? And yeah. I mean, just the OMG games. Game 2, they ban Xerath, and the whole game goes to shit, right?
And it's the saddest thing is like, why would you ban, like, okay, we're gonna have this discussion because like Flandre carries that team in the picks and bans. Like it's so difficult to say that, but it happens. So teams will try to ban the shit out of Flandre. They'll ban his Gnar. They'll ban his Rumble once he's really good on it. They'll ban they'll ban just about everything until they realize that he plays everything. He actually, like, you look into his LSPL stats. You look into like he just feel like he's like, I will play Yasuo Fizz this game. I'll play top LeBlanc with Static Shift, which they were legitimately afraid of and banned it because, like, I want to, oh my god. The first week of games were so sad to watch those picks and bans against, like, this team because, of course, teams ban LeBlanc, and you're like, they're not going to seriously expect Baka to play LeBlanc because he doesn't. In fact, in the LSPL, he literally never played LeBlanc. They would have times in which they pick LeBlanc for a flex pick, kind of like trick the team into thinking, Blanca's gonna play LeBlanc this game, guys, and then they just set it down as the support because Colin used to play support LeBlanc. So like now, I guess like the top laner Flandre plays LeBlanc. So it's like, why are you why are you trying to ban out Flandre? And so that's been a problem with him. Crystal's bad, and so then you have the instant gratification of, what was it? It was amazing, like OMG versus Snake Game 2, and that's when life became right again, because teams were like, actually, let's ban out Xerath. Or I don't remember actually too well if they banned or picked it away.
They banned. I'm pretty sure they banned it away. It was like second ban. Yeah.
Yeah, and so like suddenly you find like. It's like, oh god, I gotta find a champion. He plays Syndra. He rarely plays Syndra, obviously. Like the last time I saw him play Syndra was like in the first couple weeks of the LSPL. And of course, Syndra got like pretty bad, like it was a pretty bad nerf against her. So he suffered. And they actually ended the game extremely early because they didn't have the wave clear on him. And they just rammed their fist in Crystal every moment they got. It was
that sounds dirty, man.
I mean, it was dirty though. To be fair, it was. Crystal literally could not have gotten caught more. Yeah. First off, so this man literally never misses an opportunity to rocket jump into the enemy team, which means that not only is he one of the most aggressive players I've ever seen, most of the time wrongly so, he's doing it against a team who is actively committing the majority of their resources to murdering him.
And his pathing is so bad because he would be taking these weird directions into, I think Kelsey and Frost said this, and it's so true. Like his pathing is I'm gonna walk through this jungle, I'm gonna walk through the river to get to the mid lane. He takes so many risks, and team will never know what's happening because they won't place wards. But when they start placing wards, they start looking. It's like, oh, let's check out on the videotape here. Wait, what is he doing over there? Let's just send 5 people and let's destroy him. And so they do it, and it's like, well, there we have it, boys. He's not an MVP, even though he won. His MVP points are just undeserved.
If he is winning, it is because Beast and Ella are gods, to be fair. Beast and Ella just do so well at keeping him alive. And he's mechanically good. Don't get me wrong. When he gets into a team fight, if the rest of his team engages a team fight correctly, he will play a team fight. No, that's not even true. He won't play a team fight correctly. But usually he's far enough ahead or, is playing a scaling champion and will eventually do something in that team fight. And in a lot of team fights, it looks like he's carrying. But keep in mind, it's usually because he's so far ahead or playing a champion that has such a huge power spike that he can do well. But, just thinking back, even that first game, that man rocket jumped in the most risky ways possible. And if OMG had one more item on just one of their people, he would have died in every one of those fights. But because like they just didn't quite have enough damage, it always worked out, and suddenly he looks like he's this master tactician that just plays flawlessly in these team fights.
I'm just trying to remember off the top of my head, but like the reason why OMG, it was a 1-1 on that set, right? If I remember correctly. I could be wrong. I'm gonna check anyways, just so I don't sound like a massive idiot. But like, let's see. Snake. God help me. Was it even this?
What are you trying to find right now?
Like how the set went.
The OMG versus.
Yeah,
oh, it was bad. I mean, game 1.
That was week 2, actually.
Yeah, that was a while ago. But I like that set.
God, that was a while, but I love that set.
It's a good set. It's a great set, by the way. If you want to look at Snake's strengths and weaknesses, definitely watch OMG versus Snake week 2.
I thought the LGD set too was pretty good with them because it showed like they had the early lead. Snake did, and they kind of just grew it with that early dragon and.
Yeah, sorry. I was about to say because I thought it was like on a previous week. No, it was just the first game of this week actually. So I'm not crazy. Okay. And it was a 1-1 split. And the reason why they lost the first game, I shit you not, is because they knew, like, it was the most obvious thing that, like, they didn't ban Xerath, and so, like, Xerath, like, Baka was gonna pick Xerath, so who do they pick in the mid lane? Cassiopeia. And so you're like, I wonder, is she gonna be able to dodge those skill shots? It did never happen. And
the answer is no.
That's the ego pick. That's what I would like to refer that to. That's like the Faker pick, where Faker's like, yeah, I can win this lane, like no problem. I can outplay this guy with a. It's just
so. Yeah. Well, once teams start picking it up, like they're dead. Like that's all I have to say. They're gonna be a middle. They're not going to be a bad team. That's going too far. I think they're going to be a middle of the pack team. They're going to be like 5th place, whatever, 4th. I don't know.
Well, I said 5th before the show started. I'm a huge Snake fan, but you're right. Like they have very obvious, very easy to exploit weaknesses, and so it's a race between will Snake figure their shit out versus will teams figure out Snake. And it's going to be a lot harder for Snake to fix their problems than it is going to be to say ban Xerath and camp the shit out of Crystal, which are like 2 really easy things to do, especially with the amount of dominant laners present on the majority of like the top teams in China right now. So, yeah, let's talk about the most disappointing team.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Let's talk about King. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So a lot of people, the same people are going to be like, well, you spoke King up, you hyped them up, and you broke my heart. What happened to them? And King, okay, here's probably something you're going to be hearing a lot is the fact that, like, oh, you expected too much out of them because it was the preseason and the teams weren't really, like, motivated or cared. King's strength started before Worlds even happened. Like, in fact, something that most people remember is when Starhorn Royal Club had that whole drama in, like, UZI was like, oh, I'm not going to Worlds, blah, 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 and he had, like, everyone, like, that was, like, the biggest shit fest ever. And in part, it was due to the fact that they got 2-0'd by King, which by the time, like, that time was, like, an LSPL first-place team. Everyone was like, this team has a lot to prove, and you know what? They just destroyed, like, they 2-0'd them. And in part of because of, like, picks and bans, but later on, like, and King went on to go into the finals against EDG, and they took a game off of them. And that is so important to remember because, of course, even though it was a 3-1, they took a game off the best Chinese team at the time going into Worlds. So they were prepped. Like, that, you can't take that away from them. And then, of course, later on in the preseason, they faced up teams like OMG couldn't take a game off them. They destroyed EDG. Oh, no. Okay, no, that's too much. But, like, they went tit for tat for EG. There was this whole thing where EG would always just EDG. Did I say EG? Jesus, I'm not thinking anymore.
Same team, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Evil geniuses. Yeah. So EDG will always like, beat them out in finals or like at some point in Demacia Cup, and then finally King would like answer back and take sets off of them. And so it was really exciting. It was fun to see, and like that was the top of King's success. And so how was King successful? They were a team that was always had a pulse on the meta. They were a team that was so close to the meta, like they would always probably be the team that I would not say perfect it, but they would be like very competitive and they would be the first to pick it. And so you come into this meta and like suddenly they can't. They suck dick. Like starting from picks and pans, because guess what? Like Lonely doesn't play Jarvan, and so you're like, wait a minute, how does a jungler not play Jarvan? What has he played before?
Here's the thing: is it's like Jarvan is valuable for so many reasons. First off, I think he's the best jungler without a doubt.
Yeah.
I mean, comparable to Lee Sin if you're a mechanical god. But the other thing is that Sky plays a shit ton of Jarvan. So you will not only are you not ever picking Jarvan for your jungler, you're pretty much telegraphing that your top laner is going to play it every time. And Lonely, like the only thing that King does in pick bans that I've seen is pick Jarvan and Lee Sin and deny the enemy a top tier jungle by doing that. And it doesn't do anything. Is the bottom line. Like Jarvan just isn't powerful enough. And no teams have learned after all of like the games before LPL started that they're not going to pick Lissandra into it. Like the one matchup where you're going to win, they're not going to pick into it. And even if they do, I don't know, even if they have, from what I've seen, I haven't been impressed. I've been super disappointed because Hermit was a huge King fan. Totally got me psyched for it.
Yeah.
You guys on China Talk also got me excited for it. And you're
I blame you for my disappointment, Rose.
I'm sorry.
But I think you're right. Like we haven't in the past meta, we saw King adapt constantly. You know, and I don't think they perfected it. I would agree. I don't think they ever perfected it, but they were always up to date. And they were always up to date faster than the most of the other teams they played against, right? Which was cool and it was impressive. And oftentimes they like used things in clever ways that we hadn't really seen used in China previously. And that was awesome. But you're right, this season they look like they're always one step behind, which was quite frankly like not their only strength, but their biggest strength. And so like I think the majority it just feels like they can't win a game now.
And so, like, of course, like, there's Jarvan, and like, you're 100% correct in that. And then it gets deeper, and that's the saddest thing about that, is because, sure, there's that, and then you go to Sky, who I've, like, been hyping up as, like, one of the best top laners in China, like, up on the tier of, like, Going or, who else, Koro and stuff. Like, he's exceptional. And I still can't take that away from him. The problem is that he doesn't play, because it comes down to this. He plays Aurelia. Like during the protection meta, he would play like Lulu, and he'd be great on it. And he would play Gragas, and he was great on that meta. And he would play like when the most recent one in the preseason, Lissandra, he was perfect on it. And then suddenly you get into this meta, and you realize it's centered around Gnar, and like Gnar and I'm struggling Rumble. And he has never played Rumble. Like, I'm trying to remember through the preseason, but I can say with a certainty he hasn't played it through the LSBL. He doesn't play. He's not a Rumble player. And so it's like, oh, okay, well, what about Gnar? And like, he just doesn't play Gnar. And I'm not sure if it's like he has the shy mentality of like Gnar is not a good champion, or you can play around it.
Like you could play around 3 seconds of hard CZ after level 16 that'll guaranteedly end a team fight with about 800 damage of burst tacked on, and that's
especially with J4 there.
Yeah, he can
J4 wall.
And he just never plays it. So he doesn't play literally 2 of the strongest meta champions right now. And so it limits them so much. And so like he starts playing Jarvan. And I don't remember the last time he's played Jarvan, but it's like obviously like he's just doing it because like Lonely won't do it. And so you have that weird ass dynamic on that team that's only recently sprouted up. And so suddenly now they're shitting the bed this meta. And it's like, okay, well, I want to take my words back about them being the strongest team. And it's okay, and their picks and bans rotations too, because they go out full Dade. Because sure, their bottom lane's great. Like I love their bottom lane. I don't want to say anything about it. Like Wushin is a great player, and so is Assassin. But if Lissandra is picked up for the middle lane, and you know who's getting picked up in the top lane, Fizz is not the pick to go into that. Like, he counterpicks himself so hard, and it's not like he doesn't even have the same Dade excuse of like, well, I'm playing this for the team fight. Like, you can't play Fizz into a team fight if you get put into a lockdown comp. Like, that's disgusting. And so I've been really outraged. I'm shitting on them so much right now, but I'm just like, because I love that team and they shouldn't be doing this, but they're doing it now when it matters. So that's just the sad thing of it. That's the sad state of King.
No, and yeah, I think you summed it up pretty nicely. I don't really have much more to add at this stage, but do you think King's? It's so hard for me to ask this because it's just it feels so hopeless. But let's say next season, is King going to be decent? Are they going to figure this shit out, or is this just like the end of King? Have we just season 5 is the death of King? They've given up on adapting.
I think they're putting all their hands up, like putting their spirit energy up for like hopefully right hear their cries. Like we need these champions now, please.
Yeah, but how long is that gonna take? If you're going for the DBZ analogy, are you gonna keep the time?
They're gonna spend 3 episodes or 3 seasons, depending on how you look on it, going ah! Just visibly, just like hands off the keyboard every game like this, like, waiting for spirit energy.
We're gonna lose this game anyways.
Rito, please.
Rito. But Jesus, but this team, I really hope that this team puts it together. And my biggest issue is that they've gone in the wrong direction in trying to get Sky to play Jarvan. Hopefully, they decide to actually address the issue at hand. But like that team will bounce back. They have time. They have time. Hopefully, I love that team. I don't want them to die. Please don't let them die. I mean, they're still like the bottom teams of like GamT and actually GamT has Xiaohu. I swear, like because now they have Angel Beats on GamT. I don't even know if they can beat them.
Oh God, please, please. Okay, well, GamT is not going to be a team we are going to talk about, but let's just jump right over to OMG. And we talked a little bit about OMG earlier, and their smart adaptation of murdering Crystal repeatedly and banning Xerath away. But, they're starting to look a lot better as the season... Well, maybe not a lot. I don't know. Run us through it, because I have my opinions, but I don't want to sound like a total jackass here by misquoting or misleading anyone before we get started.
Yeah, no worries. I just think UZI has really set the tone for this team, because now they used to be smart in the sense that, like, I don't know if they're still smart. This is the real problem, because they're such an anomaly now, because they will lose dragons all the time, but they will get towers all the time. And so they will constantly make that trade. They'll just, like, UZI will never be with the team. He'll just be off split pushing in one lane or another that's kind of empty, and he will get towers. And so and of course the team will also like farm perfectly. They will farm so damn well.
No, it's okay. Okay, so here's the thing. This is a series that we got to watch together, which was so funny because we're sitting here and Kelsey's like, so OMG got a bunch of towers, and everyone's like, what the fuck? When did OMG get a tower? Because you're watching the screen, and it literally looks like OMG is fucking around. Snake is up like Snake isn't even up gold. They're even in gold because OMG is farming so flawlessly. Yeah, but Snake is taking every objective on the map, and you're convinced Snake is winning, and then you look at the scoreboard, and OMG is up 3 turrets, and they're even in gold.
Yep. Like Snake will just it's like, okay, we've killed Cool. We've killed him. We've got him. All right. We've taken the dragon. Okay. We're gonna go for the mid tower. What happened to our other towers? Wait, where everyone has they have more items than us. Wait, I thought we just killed Cool. How does he have more CS than us? This team is some shit right now. I don't know if they're really smart in the sense that they've committed to this tower pushing game, but they're doing it, and they're doing it well. So they're a team to look for. I don't know how to explain it, but
they're either so good mechanically or on an individual level, or maybe even as a team, that they feel no need to team fight and they just feel that they can outmaneuver their opponents, or they're so good individually and mechanically that they've just decided not to do anything. But just to fuck around, and they're winning every game. And it's not really... I feel like it's not clear yet which one is it going to be. Because when they play against a team that's going to require greater macro strategy than that, or against a team that moves around the map as well as they do, which, to be fair, right now, I don't think is even that well. It's just, for whatever reason, they keep coming out on top with turrets. It really does baffle me. What is their strategy going to be? What greater strategy are they going to have? Or are they just going to be like, all right, the 4 of the core OMG roster members, everyone but UZI, is going to move around the map together like a team and do stuff like a team, and UZI is going to be committed forever to farming in a solo lane.
It's going to be really hard to really judge this team because they've played this style, they've committed to this style, and maybe it's a smart style because in the end of the day, they have a lot more gold. So, like, just not committing to dragons or not valuing it is something like that they want to go for. But also, they've actually had the easiest schedule I've ever seen in my life. Like, like their first week was Vici, EP, and you're like, okay, Energy Pacemakers, Vici Gaming. Vici Gaming wasn't looking too well, and of course, like they wanted to like form up in their first week, so they had like that ramp up level. The next week was like Starhorn Royal Club, and you're like, okay, they have HYY, they need to work on something. The next game was like, I was like World Elite, and I don't even want to explain World Elite because it's just basically like the hamster on a wheel. That's Spirit right now. Like he's working, but it's not nothing's coming out of it.
The World Elite organization as a whole has my favorite pick ban theory of all time, which is just literally try to ban tradition. Well, not even like outdate your bans by 3 months and then pick only for what your team wants and don't deny the enemy team anything. That's from what I've seen from their theory. So their pick bans are a fucking train wreck. Just consistently awful. Like World Elite Academy was bad, World Elite is bad at pick bans, and you're right. Like the only player on World Elite that looks anywhere near remarkable is Spirit, and it's like when Monty used to talk about Faker 1v9ing, like having to fight his own team to win a game. That's what it looks like when Spirit is playing the game too.
Yeah. So that team's had an easy road so far, except for Snake, but Snake is like that anomaly, and they had to deal with it. So it's like, okay. So now later on, they're going to face some serious teams, and it's going to be interesting to see how that works out. But for now, they've just been whatever, I guess you can say.
Yeah, I'm disappointed, I guess is the way I would say it. I expected more from OMG, but you know, one thing we talked about in the past was that like teams tend to maybe not slack off, but not like put their heart and soul into every other game just because of the sheer quantity of games getting played. And I'm still holding out hope that that's what's going on with OMG, and that OMG, there's more going on with OMG. They are going to be a better team in the long run. That like right now they're just not. They're very much worried about getting tired out, and like that this is just greater strategy. And secretly they are infinitely more brilliant than I am, and that they're pulling this all together. And they're gonna. That's the hope, right? Like,
that's a nice thought.
It's a nice thought.
That's It's comforting. It'll keep you warm at night. I don't know how much validity there is to it, but
yeah, they're gonna be my new CLG, where I put my hope in my
your new CLG.
Yeah,
that's dangerous, man.
So
my new CLG.
So like, how is their train gonna get? Just what kind of misfortune is have? What kind of misfortunes await their hype train now that you've called it the new CLG?
The one plague that's their supporting position, like that's just the cancer, like it's just that's rude. But like it just comes down to the point that they need to find a support that works for that team. And Luo's actually
so toxic.
I'm sorry, but like they do need to find us. Like Luo's working well, and maybe they can just work off of Luo. I can't even say anything badly about him. His laning's okay. Like it's not as good as Cloud, but at the same time, Cloud is just not good for the team. So like I can understand that.
Yeah. All right, so let's talk about the other top team, currently in second place, I believe, EDG.
Yeah.
So once again, I mean, like you're the expert here. Walk us through EDG. Sorry to make you just sit here on a pedestal.
EDG
this is one
pretty
long
much
past pedestal.
It's okay, but EDG is basically Samsung Blue. They've adopted that style because I don't want to say that they lose lanes. Koro's doing really well for his lane. It's working out perfectly fine. Pawn has trouble, but that's just Pawn Pawn things. Right now, like he's had a lot of expectations put on him, and obviously being that lane bully and having that lane strength that he hasn't really lived up to that point. And then you have him in the bottom lane, but like that's his role. And then you have him in the bottom lane. Now actually they've swapped their support. I forget the name. Is like it starts with an M. I'm sure it starts with an M. Anyways. And deft, and regardless of their support, their laning is the same in the sense that they either lose lane or they go even, and so the team will just like find themselves in a deficit at some point in the early game, depending on the team obviously, and then it won't matter because team fights happen and they just destroy everyone. Like their team fighting is so damn well, like it's the best in the like. I have not seen a team fight in Korea, and like as good as as much as I love Brazil, as like
yeah, no, Brazil. I love Brazil too, but I don't think the team fights are there. Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah.
Like I think, and that's always kind of been one of EDG's big strengths. Forgive me, I cannot remember for the life of me remember their jungler's name.
Oh, their jungler is Clear Love.
Clear Love, the master of the lane gank. Or the walking through the lane,
yes.
not ganking. This is my favorite thing that Kelsey has ever told me, by the way. So if I come back to this, but he's just such a team fighting god that he just doesn't need to or can't exert early game pressure. But because he team fights so very, very well, it's just
style,
yeah, that's the style of the team, and it's executed pretty well.
He just kind of walks around and is like, "You good? Cool."
All right,
Cool.
Back to farming Wraiths.
don't engage on my mid laner. I'm in the middle of the lane right now. I'm gonna leave, but I might be back. You don't know.
You never know.
He's just
I'm watching you.
he's
This
just
could be a
jogging
game I figure out
laps.
how to gank.
I might actually create some pressure. Don't test me now.
He's like Swiper from fucking Dora the Explorer. He's just kind of there and then he like disappears for a while.
He's just like, okay, I'm back. I'm going back home. Guy's amazing. But yeah, that's EDG, and I think they're the best team in the world right now. But that's my opinion. That's on me. I don't know about you, LoL Esports, but they're the best team in the world right now. So
I think we know that LoL Esports isn't gonna say that.
yeah.
Nope.
No, I
Never.
think we can be pretty sure that the best team in the world will be something ridiculous.
Probably be SK. Probably be SK.
SK.
If I had to
One.
guess, the LOL Esports #1 power rank team will be SK
Excuse
because
you,
they
sir.
speak English, yo. They speak English.
It's very important.
We can market this to people who speak English and read English. So let's make it SK. Yeah, it's a good idea.
I won't comment on the LoL Esports marketing, or sorry, not marketing strategy. Honest and well-formed opinions presented there.
I will. They're bullshit.
God damn it.
Well, why am I not
Bring us
surprised?
All
Not
right.
surprised to say that.
Obviously, there's a few people there who actually know what they're talking about.
All right. Speaking of Samsung Blue, Dade sucks ass on his new team. Former Samsung Blue mid laner. The Dade retirement home, as it's so affectionately referred to. Every once in a while he carries a game, but most of the time he, plays the game, kind of. So, what the hell is M3's deal? Let's cover them before we close out for the night.
Okay, so I like the fact that we saw Singed out of Looper. That's like a nice throwback. But Dade has problems.
Yeah, the young
and I guess
Singed.
The young Singed though, and I like the fact that he built like Tanky and the what was it called, Righteous Glory.
Righteous
so that's
Glory.
that's really nice on this Singed. I never thought about that one before. But the team is interesting. They're good. No, I can't say that. They're okay. Ruo is really good as a jungler. He makes some problems. He makes some mistakes, but it's like okay. He's like I haven't been disappointed in his jungling at the moment. Looper's teleports. Suddenly you realize that he needs team communication to be able to pull him off well enough. But that's just at that point you're like okay, whatever. Like he's not going to be able to pull off like nice teleports. But he's a good laner. He's good. And then Dade. Oh, Dade. He never fails to like suck dick at
He never fails to fail.
like and pick and bans like he's a great player. I don't want to like say anything badly about him in that respect. He's shown what he can do when he's at his peak, but when he doesn't care, well, I'll tell you what, man, doesn't care. Like he doesn't give a damn about his picks and bans. Like they will reserve last pick for him, and I will never understand why. Because if you're just waiting for him to last pick a champion, and then it's just like he'll never look to counter the lane. At the very best, he'll look for a team fighting, but like he just like picks a shit champion like for the composition. Like not even the composition. I mean just for like this laning phase. He'll get dumpstered in the laning phase because he reserves his last pick to counter himself. That's some like circular logic. I've never seen that one before, but it happened. So that's just like. But M3, I think that team can come together later on, but their bottom lane needs work. I think because you can, if you get the motivation on those players, like their mid lane's gonna do fine, their top lane's gonna do fine, their jungler's gonna be all right. But then you look in the bottom lane, you have Candy and X. Like I don't remember the support's name, and it's very sad, but it's just like he's forgettable. So that bot lane's just bad. Like the worst game was just like M3 versus, was it Gamty? It was definitely Gamty, in which you just saw like how bad those bot laners are. No, actually Gamty's like, okay, no, I can't say that because Gamty's bot laner at least Tail is good. Like he's good, he's not consistent, but he's a good player. And if he's inconsistent, he's just as good as Candy. So that's weird. That's a weird thing.
Sometimes when I'm watching Tail, it just gets caught like over and over, and it's just, oh boy.
Yeah.
This isn't good.
Some weird stuff. All right, but that's just how I feel about it. I think,
the thing with me in M3 is that when I used, like most people who have been a fan of Korea at any given point, you know Dade for being this absolute juggernaut in team fights, brilliant initiations, like pretty much carried that team via initiations. And so when I watched this new team form, it was really disappointing for me to see him, sleep through the games. And just, not only is he sleeping through the games, he's, you're right, reserved last pick and just fucking picks and bans more than they're already screwed. When they were World Elite Academy, it was bad, and now they're M3 because you got to flip it upside down to make it a legal thing, whatever. And it's still bad. So overall, I've just been disappointed in general by M3, and I'm not holding out any hope at this point. But at the end of the day, if you have not watched any China and you look at this roster on paper and their history, you're like, they could be a really good team. So I think that potential is always going to, oh God, that word. It always comes up, right? So if they decide to step up, if the teams can get the motivation, however that's going to happen, I think you're right. I think they can be better than what they are now, at least.
Yeah, definitely. I can 100% believe that. Well, better than King at least. Oof. But yeah, that's my rant. I ranted for too long. I want to be a positive human being.
Your long rant.
I quite frankly enjoyed, as I always do, China ranting. Every time we have a China Talk guest on, our China section is especially long, which is good because most of the other weeks it's like all of us pretending to know more about China than we do. Because we all watch a couple of the games. We watch a lot of the games per week, actually, but we don't have the history in China that any of the China Talk cast has. So we can only say, that's part of the reason why I think Snake was so great. I'm like, look at them. They're winning. They must be good. They're awesome. And then, someone explained Snake to me, and I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I guess if we look at their history, maybe this isn't such a good thing. Maybe they're not going to be. And I've since resigned them to 5th place. But it's good to have that perspective on China. It's good to have that info. I think that's going to be it for us this week. Normally we do make more of an effort to cover BR. BR, like we've said in the past, is an excellent region to watch and one I think people should in general be watching, despite the fact that they don't have an English stream currently. But without our regular experts, Emily Rand or Chris Cuenco, I think we're not going to go into it too much, just because kind of in the same vein as China, we just don't have the same history with the region those two do. So is there anything else anyone would like to say about the regions we discussed tonight?
Not necessarily.
Nope.
I
think we covered everything.
No. I was just gonna say that, like you said, we don't have Emily or Chris here, but they did want me to talk about Brazil because I did watch the most of the games in the last 2 weeks. But I do not feel as comfortable without one of them on as well. But I'll just say this: from the games of the last week, you should just watch them, kind of get a feel for yourself because I think they're kind of like Baby China. I was talking to Emily and Kelsey Moser about this in Frost as well. I do kind of think that Brazil is kind of like the smaller Baby China because they will often fight before taking an objective instead of having proper rotations because their rotations game is still pretty weak, but they're very aggressive. When they come into a team fight, they'll go all in for the team fight whether or not their team fighting is messy or not. And some players are actually just really good, even outshining Daydream and Emperor, the CJ Blaze imports. You should just keep an eye out for Napon, Travolta, Mikao, players like that. All great. And I think you should give Brazil a try.
Yeah, if you want to watch a game from the past week, one that me and Frostgren actually did a practice cast over that was really fun was Kaboom Black versus Pain Gaming, and that was an excellent game to watch. It was very exciting. To keep in perspective how much they team fight, Rek'Sai died and then ulted back into a team fight is how long that team fight continued. So as far as exciting games go, it's great to watch. If the recording of our practice cast is still up, don't watch that. Because we don't know anything about BR, and we just literally made things up as we went, and that is not what you want. But
you also confused the two Kabooms.
No, that was intentional.
I know. That's what I mean. Like, it was a for fun kind of cast. It actually kind of reminded me of like a little bit of NA back in like early season 2, because they didn't really have rotations as a word back then or anything as a concept. They would just fight a lot. Maybe maybe reminded me a little bit of Epic Gamer. They don't exist anymore, but they were my favorite team. Makes me a little sad, but still.
All right, watch BR. It's wonderful.
BR. Follow Emily and Chris on Twitter. They talk about Brazil a lot. Frequently. Yeah.
Also, Raz, follow our wonderful guest Raz. Make sure to check him out on China Talk. Of course, their VOD out for their most recent episode is out. Don't play League with him. Apparently, he's a giant troll. I don't know. Refer to him as Razzle Dazzle whenever possible. Big thanks, of course, to Dave and Steven, as always. Dave, for those of you who are Halo fans, will be releasing a video shortly where he has an interview with a very prominent Halo player, a member of C9. If you guys want more information, make sure to follow him on Twitter or check that out. And as always, thank you everyone for watching. This has been episode 18 of Into the Rift. Make sure to follow us at Paravine Network or check out our website, paravine.com, for any of your most recent League of Legends news needs. We also have sections on other things that we may cover. But overall, we'll see you guys here next week on Tuesday, same time as always. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great night.